This man's power is too great to be measured by the spirit root test. Meanwhile, his childhood sweetheart possesses exceptional cultivation aptitude. For him, she chooses to give up immortality. She chooses to grow old with him in the mortal world. But the man's inability to be measured is because the spirit root testing array is too low level. His body, that of a celestial venerable, is simply incompatible with it. Everyone thinks he's a good for nothing, but he merely released a single drop of spiritual energy. It almost caused the spirit testing array to explode. The elders were all dumbfounded. They had only heard of this kind of mutated spiritual root in top-tier sects. In just a few breaths, they saw a vision of the sect's rise to prominence. The man's name was Yun Kinkyu. He was the strongest being in the cultivation world. He was undefeated throughout his life. Just as I was about to ascend and become a god, I unexpectedly found myself possessing the body of a boy with the same name, and this boy was lying in a fairy's bathing pool. When Yun Kinkyu came to his senses, these girls were already drawing their swords, preparing to kill him. At that moment, the originally calm lake surface suddenly erupted with a huge splash. Several female cultivators were blown away on the spot. This is a fourth-order demonic beast that has cultivated for 1,000 years. The girls' eyes are filled with fear. I'm afraid only the elders of Sword Valley, united, could fight it. One of the women sent her junior sisters to summon the sect elders for help. She stayed behind to hold it off, but how could she be a match for such a demonic beast? With a single blow, she was rendered completely defenseless. The woman spat out a mouthful of blood and gradually lost consciousness. Just as she was about to fall, a young man caught her in his arms. At the same time, he erased the overwhelming pressure. Yun Kinkyu turned and looked at the nearby demon beast. He clenched his fist. Then he casually threw a punch. The terrifying demonic beast exploded on the spot the next second. Not even a trace of its body remained. I forgot to control my power. I was looking forward to eating some grilled fish. Yun Kinkyu sighed. As he was about to leave, he suddenly saw a young boy's face in the lake. At that moment, a sharp pain shot through his head. He felt as if two memories were constantly entangled. After a moment, he understood. He realized that his soul had transmigrated into the body of a young man named Yumkyu. The young man had gone out to gather herbs, but encountered a fox demon on the way. The two fought for 3 days and nights until the demon was exhausted and died. The body was thrown into a lake. Yun Kinkyu first checked his own body. My cultivation has officially reached the divine transformation realm. But strangely, instead of ascending, I appeared here. As he was lost in thought, the young girl ran over. She was the host's childhood sweetheart, Ling Xiaoya. Seeing him, she scolded him for disappearing for the past few days. The day for the Gyu and Sword Valley disciple selection is approaching. Here, who wouldn't want to embark on the immortal path, become a revered existence admired by all? All things are inferior, only cultivating immortality is supreme. Yun Kinkyu twitched his mouth after hearing this. I've been cultivating for 10,000 years. Just finished my immortality journey, and now I have to start over again. I finally have a chance to relax, and I'm not doing that. As the strongest man in the cultivation world, he is now being questioned by his childhood sweetheart, doubting his talent for cultivation. And the woman, even if it meant giving up cultivation, would do so without hesitation for him. But now, no matter what, she has to give it a try. The two of them arrived at an immortal mountain in Gyu and Sword Valley. Here, if they pass the test, they will be qualified for cultivation. Ling Xiaoya gazed at the distant mountain peak and couldn't help but sigh. If she could be selected to stay here, she could fly in the sky like those cultivators. But it's just flying with a flying artifact. Yun Kinkyu told her that it was actually very simple. But the woman thought he was just bragging. Yun Kinkyu is a man from the topmost level of the world. For a selection in such a small sect, even if it's troublesome, it's nothing to him. But in the woman's eyes, he can barely lift a brick, let alone talk about cultivating immortality. Yun Kinkyu was extremely displeased with this. He was thinking about whether to scare this girl a little. The test would begin soon. A fairy was registering those who were about to go. When she saw Yun Kinkyu, she immediately recognized this lecher. She hurriedly pulled her senior sister over. The woman was very curious about how he survived under the hands of a fourth-tier demon beast. She appeared to be very happy on the surface, but she hoped even more that Yun Kinkyu would stay. She would properly teach this fellow a lesson later. Ling Xiaoya saw this scene and instantly became very jealous. Yun Kinkyu could only attribute it to his good looks. After counting everyone's names, the test officially began. Those with single-attribute spiritual roots passed the test. Those with dual-attribute spiritual roots became geniuses that the sect would focus on cultivating. The 3 attributes have not been detected yet, and among these people, 2/3 haven't passed the test. Yun Kinkyu smiled as she watched Ling Xiaoya's back. Her aptitude had already been investigated by Yun Kinkyu in advance. Soon she would astonish everyone. Sure enough, the moment Ling Xiaoya stepped into the spiritual formation, brilliant spiritual energy quickly spread. In no time, 3 different colored lights enveloped her entire body. The Jian Valley sect leader's pupils suddenly constricted. A triple spiritual root. This is truly a once-in-a-blue-moon genius. The elders exchanged glances. They all saw the excitement in each other's eyes. As the spiritual array's light faded, Ling Xiaoya anxiously awaited the announcement of the results. She's a good seedling for cultivation, the sect leader said with a smile. Ling Xiaoya, you have outstanding talent. Come back to the sect with us ahead of time. These words caused everyone to admire her greatly. But Ling Xiaoya hesitated for a moment. She asked the sect leader to let her wait until her companions finished testing before making a decision. The Sword Valley sect leader was in a good mood. Then Yun Kinkyu calmly walked up. He stood there, stunned on the spirit formation. I've waited so long, but there's still no sign of him. The Jian Valley sect leader saw the girl's disappointed expression, so he advised her, for cultivators, time flies by like a fleeting moment. In the blink of an eye, decades pass. How can you possibly pine for a mortal for your entire life? Ling Xiaoya's eyes glistened with tears. She didn't want to leave this man. Just as she was about to tell the sect leader to give up on cultivating immortality and grow old with this man, she suddenly noticed the sect leader's expression was terrifying. Ling Xiaoya turned around and saw. She was instantly surprised and covered her mouth. Yun Kinkyu was emitting a dazzling spiritual light, powerful waves nearly shattering the testing spirit array. The elders were all dumbfounded. This is actually the legendary mutated spiritual root, but Yun Kinkyu feels quite helpless. The level of this spirit testing formation is too low to test his spiritual root. Helpless, he can only release a bit of spiritual energy himself, as long as it's enough to attract attention. But accidentally, he also revealed his ice attribute spiritual root. At this point, everyone was stunned. Dual attribute mutated spiritual root. This innate talent has never been heard of even in top-tier sects. This man is so powerful that his strength is terrifying. Even the sect's spirit testing formation couldn't gauge his depth. But in order to be with his childhood sweetheart, he merely released a drop of spiritual power, causing the entire sect to tremble. This freak with dual attribute mutated spiritual roots has left the elders unable to put into words the shock in their hearts. Facing the sect's imminent rise, they immediately gathered together to discuss who could mentor such a peerless talent. This left Yun Kinkyu, who had originally wanted to keep a low profile, dumbfounded. He just wanted to attract attention. He never expected it to end up becoming a hot potato. The elders and the sect leader no longer cared about the following tests. They immediately began the process of fighting over recruits. The sect leader was the first to try to take them as disciples. A group of elders immediately became furious. They began to insult each other in whispers. They made all kinds of enticing offers. Ling Xiaoya's choice was simple. Wherever Yun Kinkyu went, she would go. And when Yun Kinkyu heard that the fourth elder was the least restrictive with disciples, he immediately agreed without a second thought. At this moment, the elders were all dumbfounded. They never expected the biggest winner to be. Instead, it was the fourth elder who had not appeared before. Seeing their determination, they couldn't say much more. Following their two senior sisters, they toured the sect together. But Yun Kinkyu, no matter what he saw, kept thinking about food. This made Ling Xiaoya quickly press his head and apologize to her senior sisters. But I didn't expect senior sister to be such a foodie. Soon the two arrived at their lodgings. But there was only one room. The senior sisters thought they were a couple, so they gave them the cultivation scrolls and left. Ling Xiaoya, blushing, quickly called out to her senior sister. After her explanation, senior sister finally understood. So in Yun Kinkyu's sorrowful frustration, Ling Xiaoya followed the two senior sisters out of the hall. Before leaving, she didn't forget to turn around and make a face at Yun Kinkyu. She couldn't help but think about those things. The next morning, they arrived at the agreed training location. When it came to training, Yun Kinkyu's head ached. Just graduated from the path of cultivation and now it's starting again. The senior sister saw the two arrive. She then began the most basic lecture. The cultivation levels of cultivators range from low to high as follows: Kai Refining Foundation Establishment Core Formation, Spirit Gathering Golden Core Nascent Soul, Void Realm Tribulation Crossing, and Divine Transformation. The sect leader of the Return to Origin Sword Valley is a powerful cultivator at the Golden Core stage. The young spirit, Xiaoya, was listening with excitement. Yun Kinkyu, a great cultivator at the Metamorphosis Realm, is now being belittled in front of everyone as a mere trash cultivator at the Golden Core stage. He truly has no way to explain his predicament. The Key Condensation Realm is the beginning of cultivation. At her senior sister's explanation, Ling Xiaoya immediately closed her eyes and tried to cultivate. Not long after that, ethereal spiritual energy began to swirl around her. After Ling Xiaoya entered the meditative state, senior sister couldn't help but praise her. On the other hand, Yun Kinkyu was slacking off nearby. Ling Xiaoya immediately gave him a scolding. The two senior sisters also thought that although his talent was outstanding, being overly proud and aloof was not a good thing. Yun Kinkyu felt a bit helpless about this. In his view, absorbing spiritual energy is as natural as breathing, a skill you're born with. I didn't expect that something like this still needs to be learned. In order to avoid being looked down upon by the girl, he immediately entered a meditative state. The senior sister was immediately shocked. They didn't expect that this junior brother's comprehension would be so high. But an hour passed, and Yun Kinkyu still showed no signs of waking up. My senior sisters hadn't yet recovered from their shock. The next second they were completely dumbfounded. She absorbing spiritual energy. They felt their worldview had been shattered. In all their years they had never heard of a cultivator who could absorb spiritual energy just starting their cultivation. The amount of spiritual energy Yun Kinkyu absorbed is comparable to masters. Where did this prodigious talent come from? Yun Kinkyu, to avoid unnecessary celestial phenomena, only opened one spirit. He has hundreds of millions of such spirit veins. On the day this man entered the sect, he displayed terrifying cultivation talent. Others need several years to enter the key condensation stage, but he absorbs spiritual energy as easily as breathing, a natural talent. Senior sister Luo forcibly suppressed her shock. He couldn't help but praise, "Junior brother, you're truly a prodigy. To enter a deep meditative state on your first try, and to successfully absorb spiritual energy without guidance." She tried to calm herself down, then asked her junior brother how he'd done it. Yun Kinkyu helplessly shrugged. As far as he knew, there has never been such a thing as key cultivation. He can only attribute everything to his good looks, but the consequence of being handsome is that for the next 3 days, Ling Xia, feeling discouraged, focuses on her cultivation. No one pays attention to him. Yun Kinkyu is deeply troubled. His cultivation is unparalleled in this world. Loneliness and isolation are what torment him the most. Ling Xia was also very happy that Yun Kinkyu was able to master the key refining method so quickly. But in the past, she was the one who always protected this man. She never expected he would surpass her so quickly. This made her decide to go into seclusion and focus on her cultivation. So Yun Kinkyu could only go find the 2 senior sisters to hang out. Lu Yuanji and Miyun looked in shock at Yun Kinkyu as he devoured plate after plate of food. He must be a glutton who has cultivated into a spirit. The junior sister Lu looked at him, feeling quite pleased with himself. But inside, she felt a little annoyed. This junior brother finished his key refining stage study in just 1 hour. He spends every day leisurely strolling around, looking so carefree. This isn't cultivation at all. It's just like being a master. Seeing Yun Kinkyu finish eating and getting ready to go out again, a mischievous smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Junior brother, wait a moment. Let's chat. She deliberately struck a seductive pose. Yun Kinkyu, without thinking too much, sat down, but the next second he froze. Those long, beautiful legs under the skirt were incredibly shapely and plump. The lines were also perfectly sculpted. Definitely a pair of legs to die for. Just as he was completely absorbed in looking at it, Lu Yuanji asked with a smile, "Does it look good?" Yun Kinkyu blurted out, "Of course it looks good, so white." But when he saw the disdainful look from his senior sister, he quickly corrected himself. "The floor, it's so white." His senior sister asked, "Was it you peeping that day?" Facing this kind of question, Yun Kinkyu naturally wouldn't admit it. He said indignantly, "Who is so desperate to dare spy on senior sister?" Lu Yuanji didn't respond to him, but slowly opened her collar. She revealed her snowy neck and collarbone. Yun Kinkyu hurriedly covered his nose. Seeing Yun Kinkyu like this, Lu Yuanji reached out and pinched Yun Kinkyu's ear. "But now you're watching." Yun Kinkyu seems a bit dumbfounded. "This can still be played like this? I've lived for over 10,000 years, and I can't even outplay a girl in her 20s. The world has really changed." Yun Kinkyu quickly hugged his senior sister's leg. He told her that it wasn't intentional. He also didn't know why he ended up there. Senior sister Lu stroked his head upon seeing this. "You arrived at the lake before we did. If you had come later and spied on me, I would have sensed your presence. After all, I am in the late stage of foundation establishment." Yun Kinkyu broke out in cold sweat. He gave his senior sister a thumbs up. Lu Yuanji then asked him, "Back then, even the sect couldn't handle that 4th-tier exotic beast. Did you see who the distinguished guest is?" "Don't directly say you fainted." Lu Yuanji didn't suspect anything either. Seeing Yun Kinkyu trying to sneak away, she let out a cold shout, startling Yun Kinkyu. "I didn't say I forgive you. Regardless of whether it was intentional, you already spied on me. Now a group of innocent and pure maidens have been defiled by you. Your crimes are heinous." Yun Kinkyu exclaimed with the asterisk. This man, revered as the Green Emperor in the cultivation world, is now merely a disciple in a small sect. The man's senior sisters are all malicious. They not only tempt him to sin, now she lets him into her boudoir to play. Yun Kinkyu was completely stunned. But it wasn't until he went in that he understood. Senior sister actually asked him, the man who once roamed across 4 realms and 12 domains, and single-handedly swept through hundreds of high-level demon beasts to do women's work. Looking at his little junior brother, who was teased and wearing an expression of disbelief, Lu Yuanji hummed a little tune and happily left. Yun Kinkyu looked at the female worker, who was even harder to deal with than a 9th-tier demon beast. I immediately followed my senior sister outside. At this time in the huge library, Luo Yuanji and Mu Yun were frowning and copying some ancient books. Yun Kinkyu, who had rushed over, preferred to help them copy books rather than do needlework. Senior sister Lu sighed. She stood up and pointed to the bookshelves filling the room. "Do you see all these books? Do you think it's easy?" Yun Kinkyu was somewhat puzzled as to why they weren't using spiritual power. The senior sister explained to him. The wind control technique is extremely difficult to learn at the beginner level. Otherwise, the great elder wouldn't have set such a punishment. After the explanation, the senior sister was about to begin copying again. Yunkinkyu awkwardly told them. Actually, he knows the wind control technique. Saying this, he walked over to the bookshelf. After confirming nothing was missed, he used his spiritual sense to control the brushes, making them write quickly. He was writing on more than 20 scrolls at once. Lu Yuanji stood nearby watching in disbelief. She felt a bit dizzy. It felt as if she were dreaming. This junior brother of hers had gone from a mortal to a cultivator in such a short time. The shock he gave them was simply overwhelming. She has been in the sect for 6 years, and has never heard of anyone at the Kia refining or foundation establishment stage mastering the wind control technique. How did that guy manage to do it? Could he be a powerful cultivator in the core formation stage? Damn, look at his clothes, he seems like a new disciple. The entire library is filled with disciples being punished by writing. It just feels like the world is too terrifying. After Yunkyu finished, he saw two senior sisters staring in disbelief. Junior brother, when did you learn to use the wind control technique? Faced with the senior sister's question, Yunkinkyu casually made up a lie to brush it off. But the senior sister, upon hearing it, became extremely excited, constantly praising him as a cultivation genius. This news will definitely cause a sensation when it spreads. As soon as these words were spoken, Yunkinkyu was immediately stunned. How could this cause such a sensation? He was also worried about the potential impact. He even used the wind control technique as an excuse. Otherwise, with just a trace of divine sense, he could control the entire library of scrolls. No one would have known that the wind control technique had actually never been successfully cultivated. Yunkinkyu quickly explained that he had learned it by mistake, but the senior sister's reaction was even more intense. They immediately decided to inform the master. Yunkinkyu was completely frantic at this moment. How did this misunderstanding keep getting worse? He tried his best to talk his way out of it, using his mutated wind spirit root as an excuse. In the end, he managed to convince the two of them, albeit with his senior's doubts. The three of them took a break before continuing to copy the books. However, the onlookers quickly spread the word, passing it on from one person to another. The rumors keep getting more and more exaggerated. This man is so powerful that he always wants to keep a low profile within the sect. A task that would normally take half a month to complete. This is still with him doing his best to suppress himself. Senior sister Lu looks at these scrolls. They were preparing to clean up and go home for dinner, but Yunkinkyu directly told them not to bother. I didn't expect this guy's face to be so red, and the senior sister's as well. She thought it was just because of the strong wind. Then she forcibly suppressed the redness on her face. The few of them walked into the hall. They were surprised to find that Ling Xiaoya was still cultivating, so they went to another room. Lu Yuanji returned to her room. Even abstract things can appeal to women. At that moment, Ling Xiaoya's joyful voice came from the hall. Her senior sister was also happy to hear that she had reached the key condensation stage. It took time, and she was completely dumbfounded. She had finally learned Q condensation, thinking she had caught up with that guy. She prepared to return to her room to study the Spirit Jew chapter diligently. This time, he wouldn't be able to eat Ling Xiaoya's cooking for a full 10 days. Only he was idle, shouting and complaining. But for Yunkinkyu, these books, especially that said about the passionate and intense relationships between masters and disciples, were absolutely thrilling to him. His body was already starting to struggle. This immortal emperor had started reading those kinds of books out of boredom, because in his time such things were completely unheard of. But just as he was engrossed in them, the junior sister and Ling Xiaoya unexpectedly walked towards him. Ling Xiaoya was very surprised by this. Aren't you someone who hates reading? Faced with the woman's doubt, Yun Kinkyu quickly hid the book behind his back. He told her that these were just books to soothe the soul. After reading them, one could temporarily feel desireless. Out of curiosity, Ling Xiaoya also wanted to take a look. But Yun Kinkyu would never let her see his secret. He hid the books while changing the subject. Fortunately, Ling Xiaoya didn't think too much about it. She gave Miyun a look, signaling her not to let the cat out of the bag. It seems everyone has their little secrets. Miyun pleaded with Yun Kinkyu to go up the mountain to collect herbs with her, because his wind riding technique was incredibly useful. Yun Kinkyu bored agreed. The three of them arrived at Beibao Peak. They saw Miyun take out a map and examine it carefully. Her expression was especially serious. Yun Kinkyu glanced at the map. To his surprise, almost everything was a straight line except for one bend. Is there even a need to look at it? With Yun Kinkyu's help, the efficiency of gathering herbs was extremely fast. He quickly gathered all the necessary herbs. Just before leaving, Yun Kinkyu pointed the little junior sister in the direction with hostility. This her is very elusive. If it weren't for his strong soul, ordinary people would have a hard time finding it. But to his surprise, this little junior sister turned out to be a pure example of big chest, no brain. Yun Kinkyu was speechless. He dug up 6-month-old fruit wine a second time. Yun Kinkyu had a headache. With great difficulty, he looked up at the tree a third time. Yun Kinkyu finally breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't expect her to be picking mushrooms. Yun Kinkyu couldn't bear it any longer. He dashed past Miyun and arrived under the tree. Then he jumped up directly. He saw a herb emitting a faint fluorescence on the tree. Yun Kinkyu picked it and placed it in front of Miyun. Miyun looked at the blue herb questioningly. Suddenly her pupils constricted. It's a mutated herb. Only 1 in 10,000 herbs mutate. Junior brother, how did you find it? Yun Kinkyu remained silent. Then turning around, she pulled out 2 small red fruits. These are 300-year-old crimson cherry fruits. Link's eyes stood to one side. But from Miyun's expression, one could tell that something serious had happened. After repeating this several times, Miyun had already gathered a pile of precious herbs. Yun Kinkyu brushed the dirt off her hands. He said expressionlessly, "Smell them carefully and remember their scent, lest you miss them in the future." Yun Kinkyu led them around a few bends and arrived before a dying old tree. At first glance, there was nothing special about it, but when he split the withered tree open, the two women were immediately captivated by the strange medicinal fragrance. Unexpectedly, a spirit orange tree was growing inside this withered tree. It's amazing that even though it's so well hidden, Junior brother was able to find it. Do you have a dog's nose or something? Just as they were getting excited, suddenly the sound of hurried footsteps approached. A woman and 2 men, all wearing the robes of Chiyan Peak, were affiliated with the second elder. Their master and the 4th elder have always been at odds, and all 3 of them are at the foundation establishment stage. Seeing them, Miyun couldn't help but feel a little flustered. This disciple just joined the sect but already possesses the strength of an immortal emperor. But now his childhood sweetheart has actually been teased by his senior brother. The man wanted to step in but was stopped by his senior sister, because in their eyes, Yun Kinkyu was just a weakling. He needed their protection. But this senior brother not only insulted him, he also wanted to make Ling Xiaoya his dual cultivation partner. At this moment, a cold light flickered in Ling Xiaoya's eyes. She tightly kept Yun Kinkyu behind her. This was a habit she had developed since childhood. Whenever Yun Kinkyu was in danger, she would always unhesitatingly stand in front. Sensing the anger, the man planned to suppress their newfound arrogance. Do you think you can act with impunity just because of your triple spirit roots talent? Today, I'll teach you some manners on behalf of your senior sisters. I'll teach you what rules are. The moment he lunged forward, the woman in red quickly urged him not to be too harsh. After all, he's a future genius of the sect. They didn't dare injure him. But what everyone didn't expect was that before the man's fist landed on Ling Xiaoya's face, he was hit by a backhand and forced to retreat. Then Ling Xiaoya took advantage of the opening created by this strike. She stepped on him, pinning him to the ground. The crowd showed expressions of disbelief. This new student, having only entered a few days ago, already learned the spiritual technique. The man angrily got up and wiped the dirt off his face. He, a cultivator at the foundation establishment stage, actually got defeated by a new student. Just as he was about to get serious, Sister Miyun also rushed forward. With their combined efforts, Fang Tu was forced to retreat. He was even at a disadvantage. Ling Xiaoya had only just started her training a few days ago, while Miyun had repeatedly finished last in the sect's competitions. It was embarrassing to see the man being beaten back step by 2 young girls. The woman in red told her junior to go up and help. The man charged forward like a vicious starving wolf, feeling the overwhelming spiritual energy. Miyun silently thought that it was bad. It was already extremely difficult for the 2 of them to deal with Fang Tu together. Adding another opponent left them with no chance of winning. The man threw a flame that directly shattered their attacks. The flame spread with incredible ferocity. The scorching heat wave forced Ling Xiaoya and Miyun to continuously retreat. Just as they were about to be engulfed by the flames, A small figure appeared in front of them. Ling Xiao immediately recognized the person as Yun Qinkyu. She hurriedly shouted desperately. But in the next moment, Yun Qinkyu gently clenched her palm. The fierce flames instantly scattered in all directions. Then they turned into small sparks and disappeared into the ground. The man hadn't had a chance to react yet when he saw a figure step out of the smoke. Yun Qinkyu said faintly, "You're quite arrogant." As soon as the words were out, he kicked directly into his chest. The speed was so fast that he couldn't even defend in time. This terrifying scene made Fang Tu shiver all over. That guy was even stronger than him. How could he be defeated by a newly admitted disciple? He saw that Yun Qinkyu didn't take him seriously, so he prepared to sneak attack from behind. But what awaited him was a spinning kick. It directly kicked him next to He Ning. The two of them fell together. Two Foundation Establishment cultivators were actually knocked down by a newcomer who had just started. How embarrassing if this gets out. The woman in red was about to strike, but she suddenly realized that the young man had already appeared in front of her without her noticing. Then she felt a strong gust of wind, which sent her flying. Yun Qinkyu then used a wind blade to chop down 3 bamboo segments. With a wave of his hand, he neatly hung them on a tree. Those who commit too many wrongs will end up hanging from the southeast branch. This terrifying scene left the two girls stunned. They returned home still unable to believe everything that had happened during the day. Upon stepping into cultivation, Yun Qinkyu's strength was terrifying. She effortlessly defeated 3 Foundation Establishment experts. This woman possesses the ancient legacy of the Tianyu sacred body. Yet now, she has been marked with a dual cultivation seal by a newly joined disciple. Qinkyu, hailed as invincible after the immortal sovereign, had already forgotten what it felt like to be protected. It wasn't until Ling Xiaoya stood up for her that she remembered that warmth. He watched the woman washing his clothes. He couldn't help but sigh, feeling how nice it was to be taken care of. Yun Qinkyu looked up, just about to say something, when he saw Ling Xiaoya looking drowsy. She seemed like she was about to fall at any moment. Yun Qinkyu hurriedly stepped forward and held her in his arms. Then he carefully sensed the golden spiritual energy around her. But the moment he recognized it, he was shocked. This is actually the legendary Heavenly Yin sacred body. Yun Qinkyu, shocked, hurriedly picked her up. Then he placed her on the bed. He sealed her with his spiritual power, fearing it might cause a heavenly anomaly. He stared at Ling Xiaoya, who was sleeping with her eyes closed. He was a little dumbfounded. This physique is an extremely rare congenital physique from ancient times. Those with this constitution are protected by the will of heaven. In the end, they all cultivate to the peak of the immortal realm, becoming renowned immortal lords. If Yun Qinkyu had this constitution, she might have ascended 2,000 years ago. But now Ling Xiaoya awakened too early. With her current body, she simply can't endure it. After thinking it over, Yun Qinkyu, he removed Ling Xiaoya's outer garment. The girl's skin was delicate and smooth, exceedingly youthful and alluring. But Yun Qinkyu didn't have time to admire it. A silvery light ignited in his hand. Then he laid a spiritual array over the woman's body. After confirming it was correct, Yun Qinkyu activated the formation using spiritual power. When Shiji and Ling Xiaoya felt an intense heat all over her body, she felt a strange tingling sensation stimulating her limbs, reaching deep in her soul. Without thinking, the woman grabbed Yun Qinkyu's neck. Then some unknown things happened. Yun Qinkyu forcefully pushed her onto the bed. After calming his heartbeat, Yun Qinkyu quickly leaned over to check the formation seal. It wasn't scary at first, but once I looked, I was shocked. The formation symbol actually turned out to be my own spiritual mark. Only dual cultivation partners have each other's spiritual marks. But he and Ling Xiaoya haven't done anything. Yun Qinkyu sat on the steps of the courtyard, a blade of grass in his mouth, contemplating life. He'd been single for 10,000 years, and now suddenly had a dual cultivation partner, and one who shared his spiritual mark no less, because this spiritual seal is extremely difficult to obtain. Even for partners who have been together for 1,000 years, the probability is still very slim, let alone forcefully taking it. This is something that can only be branded with the spiritual seal once recognized and blessed by the heavenly Tao. After obtaining the spiritual seal, the spiritual energy gained from dual cultivation will increase tenfold. This spiritual seal cannot betray. A man whose body cannot be touched by anyone without a spiritual imprint. This is a restriction from heaven's Tao. It's not something that can be changed by strength. What's even stranger, Yun Qinkyu, is this spiritual imprint is one-sided. He doesn't have Ling Xiaoya's spiritual imprint. It's just Ling Xiaoya unilaterally recognizing him. In other words, Ling Xiaoya belongs only to him from now on. Although it was a refreshing and cool autumn day, he still had a few complaints. What will he say when Ling Xiaoya discovers his own spiritual mark? How will he explain it? This man, upon entering the sect, has already placed a dual cultivation mark on the future genius. With such a spiritual mark, she will be bound by the will of heaven. From now on, no woman except Yun Qinkyu will ever love anyone else. Meanwhile, Ling Xiaoya knew nothing about the Linjin matter. She had a strange dream. She dreamt that she married Yun Qinkyu. They were sitting on a huge bed, doing something indescribable. The dream was extremely realistic. She was completely stunned. She didn't understand why she had that kind of dream. Even after she woke up, she remained dazed for a while. She checked the sheets again. There was no blood. She was still a virgin. She got dressed and walked towards the door. But when young Kinkyu outside saw her, he was suddenly stunned. Overnight, the woman seemed to have undergone a transformation. She was like a newly bloomed lotus. Her figure was graceful, like a celestial being. Ling Xiaoya, without a word, threw herself into his arms. The uncontrollable images in her mind still lingered. This made her heart race. Yun Kinkyu noticed the woman's expression. He understood that it was his spirit mark at work, but he couldn't do anything about it. After all, it was bestowed by heaven. For the next few days, Ling Xiaoya dreamt every night. Every time she recalled them, her whole body would feel feverish. I wish I could dig a hole and bury myself. Even though we grew up together as childhood sweethearts, what I just called him was so embarrassing. And in recent days, Yun Kinkyu's body has become increasingly weaker. Because of the spirit mark, his and Ling Xiaoya's fortunes are intertwined. He loses a lot of spiritual power and vitality every day. Although his immortal Zin's primordial spirit is extremely powerful, this body is simply too weak. Yun Kyu could only take the time to continue her boring physical training. She completed a year's training in just 3 days. Who could stand this? After dinner, Ling Xiaoya pulled Yun Kinkyu to the sex library. Yun Kinkyu wasn't interested in it, but Ling Xiaoya couldn't leave her side for a moment. Seeing the woman's entranced expression, Yun Kinkyu understood the little girl's intentions. She's just like his female disciple. Back when she first joined, she kept pestering Yun Kinkyu for various beauty-enhancing techniques. But after Yun Kinkyu gave her a good spanking, she behaved herself. Unknowingly, 1,000 years passed. She has also become a renowned and incredibly beautiful sword master in the cultivation world. Time flies like a galloping horse. Thinking about it, I can't help but feel a bit nostalgic. When the two of them reached the library, the male disciples suddenly had a gleam in their eyes. They couldn't help but marvel at the fact that there was such a pure and beautiful female cultivator in the sect. Some even had names for their future children planned out. But when they saw the woman with her arm linked with the young man beside her, they immediately cast various hateful looks at Yun Kinkyu. Yun Kinkyu was speechless. She couldn't understand what these young boys were thinking. Look at those grinning faces. They look like little puppies. Yun Kinkyu stopped unhappily. Have you ever bullied small animals? Ling Xiaoya was stunned. What do you mean by that? Yun Kinkyu smirked and scanned her fellow disciples. Today, I'll teach you how to bully a single dog. This young man kissed the fairy everyone dreams of as soon as he entered the sect. He paid no attention to the various howling dog barks around him. Meanwhile, Xu, who was in charge of registering books at the library, often used his privileges to flirt with girls. He certainly wouldn't let someone like Ling Xiaoya, a beauty, slip by. While Yun Kinkyu was playing around with the woman, he immediately rushed up. After getting a close look, his desires surged, and he reached out to try and tease the woman. Although everyone was upset, no one dared to stop him. If they offended him, they could forget about borrowing the spiritual formula in the future. At this moment, Yun Kinkyu grabbed that perverted hand. Senior, don't you see that the girl is clearly unhappy with you? If you're smart, you should leave. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed dramatically. Suxiu didn't expect that one of the... Young man, dare you tell me your name? Yun Kinkyu revealed his name. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in astonishment. Isn't this the new genius student with 2 mutated spiritual roots? Suku, though extremely angry inside, was also somewhat wary of his background, but this new disciple didn't give him any face at all. To save face, Suku had no choice but to make a move. He immediately clenched his fist and charged forward. Yet Yun Kinkyu showed no intention of dodging at all. She simply raised her arms slightly and took this powerful strike head-on. The onlookers were all stunned, their mouths wide open, unable to believe what they were seeing. Even Xiaoya, standing nearby, looked full of concern. Only Sukshu had a shocked expression, thinking, how is this possible? He knew Yun Kinkyu was strong, but he hadn't expected her to be this strong. But things had come to this point, so he could only grit his teeth and charge again. This time, however, he was met with a perfectly calculated heavy blow. The impact sent him reeling backwards several meters. Yun Kinkyu calmly brushed the dust off her clothes. Senior brother, weren't you full? How'd attack something soft and limp? At this moment, Exusu was filled with shame and indignation. As an elite disciple, he was knocked to the ground by a newcomer. This was an absolute humiliation. Furious and ashamed, he couldn't care about anything else. He quickly got up. With the spread of spiritual energy, sword after sword made of ice formed around him. Dozens of swords flew towards Yun Kinkyu. The onlookers were shocked and terrified. A second-rank spiritual technique, the water sword technique. Senior brother Xu wants to kill that Yun Kinkyu. In an instant, dozens of water swords zipped past Yun Kinkyu. He clasped his hands together. A faint green spiritual energy emanated from his body. A faint shadow of an ancient tree flickered around him, the green wood technique. In an instant, he shattered the formation that Sukshu took pride in. Before Xushi could react, he launched the wind palm again. A fierce wind pushed Sukshu's figure back repeatedly. until the scroll covered him. Just as Aksaya rushed over to check on Yun Kinkyu, Miyun also happened to arrive. Seeing that they were fine, she felt relieved. Meanwhile, the third elder, who heard the noise, also rushed over. He was quite interested in the talents of the two, so he decided to take them for a test. This immortal emperor had finally managed to join a small sect as a disciple, but every time he took a test, he had to find ways to suppress his cultivation to the lowest level. If he were even slightly careless, it could lead to a terrifying incident. The second elder was very interested in Yun Kinkyu's talent. Since becoming an elder, he had never seen anyone like him, who can use a basic spiritual technique to such an extent, and I also heard vaguely that this kid has mastered the wind control technique. All signs indicate that this new disciple has extraordinary talent. It's such a waste for him to be under that lazy elder from Xuanxian. He should be thoroughly investigated. Elder, I asked Miyun to conduct experiments on them. Miyun came to the tree with her head hung low. As expected, she is still the big-breasted, brainless woman. Only grade qualification. Qualifications are ranked above C and D. After 5 years of training, he's only D grade, practically bottom of the sect. But Miyun isn't his disciple. Kangmin didn't say much. Ling Xia thought she hadn't been in the sect for many days. But unexpectedly she has C grade qualification. This is the level of most disciples who reach the foundation establishment stage. This achievement is only attainable after improving one's comprehension through cultivation. Yet Ling Xia surpassed it after only a month of entry. She's already surpassed the vast majority of disciples who have cultivated in the sect for years. She's truly a genius with 3 spiritual roots. The second elder thought to himself, he had always been diligent and hardworking, a respected master in the eyes of all disciples. But he couldn't help but feel resentful that the fourth elder had such good luck. He was so sore, he just squatted down on the ground and drew circles cursing her. At this moment only Yun Kinkyu knows, this silly girl's talent is not just this. It's just that the testing tree cannot detect the level of the heavenly Yao sacred body. The second elder calmed the anger in his heart. Next up Yun Kinkyu. Ling Xia is eagerly anticipating. He thought the spirit testing tree would show. Even if Yun Kinkyu wanted to hide it, he couldn't. Yun Kinkyu sighed. He hurriedly compressed his spiritual veins again. He had finally settled down in a small sect, peacefully flirting with girls. If he scared them, it would all be over. But the moment he put his hand on it, the testing tree seemed to be stimulated. A brilliant light shot towards the entire hall. The scene before them was too shocking. Miyun was stunned and at a loss for words. Ling Xia dumbly muttered, so handsome. If it weren't for their profound cultivation, the elder would have almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. Damn, this is actually a B-grade talent. Yun Kinkyu has already reached the highest level of talent. Because only cultivators at the spirit gathering realm or higher can reach the A grade on the test tree. A grade B qualification is the highest level of authority that disciples can attain. With it they can basically borrow all the cultivation methods and spiritual techniques in the entire library. Even the genius Han Yu, who is said to be a once-in-100 years prodigy of the sect, only reached the B grade level within 2 years of entering the sect. The 4 words are truly terrifying. At this moment only Yun Kinkyu was staring, dazed at the shimmering trees. He had clearly restrained himself with his life. Why is this still happening? After he withdrew his hand, the entire tree remained glowing. Yun Kinkyu almost couldn't resist breaking it off. Impulses are the devil. He quickly told the elder that if it was over, he would like to go back and have lunch. The Yoning stage, or even the terrifying Dongsu stage, could completely lead the sect out of a single province. This important matter cannot be postponed. It must be reported to the sect immediately. He told Yun Kinkyu before leaving that the talent tree would automatically drop the corresponding certificate. Just wait a little while. Not long after the elder left, the entire test tree suddenly flashed intensely. All the leaves instantly lit up. A first-class credential landed in Yun Kinkyu's hands. Yun Kinkyu broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly hid the leaf, which symbolized first-class qualifications, in his sleeve. He only relaxed slightly when he saw that Ling Xiaoya and Mu Yun hadn't noticed. This disciple had just joined the sect when the elder took him to test his qualifications. Although he had done his best to suppress his cultivation, he was still awarded a first-class jade medal. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, he hurriedly hid the jade token. As the light flickered through the leaves, Ling Xiao's credential slowly fell down. Yun Kinkyu caught it and then handed her the grade C jade token. The group then discussed searching for some cultivation methods. Although Miyun's talent didn't qualify her for the B or C districts, this didn't affect Yun Kinkyu. She could still bring back all the cultivation methods they needed. Miyun was slightly stunned. She slowly lifted her head. After receiving a confirming answer, she immediately wrapped her arms around Yun Kinkyu's neck. This was how she expressed her joy. This scene happened so suddenly. Only Ling Xia was left standing in place going crazy. Soon he arrived at the library. Yun Kinkyu closed his eyes and recalled the scene from just now. It felt like he had walked into paradise. He wondered who'd be lucky enough to marry this little junior sister. He shook his head vigorously, pushing away that ambiguous image. Then he lowered his head and looked at the note in his hand. It recorded the cultivation method they both wanted. He curiously opened the method. Jade Body Formula, a method for refining the body, slimming, and enhancing beauty. White Lotus Fairy Technique, skin turns white, scars disappear, body hair is removed. Yunki nearly spat blood. No wonder the two girls were urging him impatiently to hurry. All this fuss just to look better. He continued reading. Charm Fox Technique enhances charm to increase attraction to male cultivators. Soul Snatching Invisibly includes illustrations for 72 practical dual cultivation positions. Yunkinkyu's face suddenly turned red. I wonder who chose this cultivation technique. After criticizing myself internally, Yunkinkyu secretly memorized the name of the technique. Such a good technique must be taken back for thorough study. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly noticed a strange bookshelf. All the other bookshelves were basically full, but only this bookshelf held a single spiritual manual. Kangran looks like a piece of junk, but since it's in Zone B, even an idiot would know that this thing is no ordinary item, and it's displayed so conspicuously. This made him quite curious. He hadn't even gotten close to the bookshelf when a wave-like barrier rippled up. It seems that only those with a certain level of cultivation are allowed to borrow it. However, this barrier of course cannot stop Yunkinkyu. He just gently tapped it. The barrier slowly faded away. He immediately picked it up and started flipping through it. Although it was an incomplete piece, it wouldn't affect his cultivation, so he decided to take it back and give it to Xiaoya. Meanwhile, on the Sex Square, dozens of disciples were still practicing diligently, sweating profusely. The explosive spiritual power and the whistling of martial arts techniques were incessant. At that moment, a graceful figure suddenly appeared in the air. Her face was like a painting, her temperament exceptional. She seemed like a fairy who had stepped out of a painting. Her arrival instantly attracted the attention of numerous male cultivators, and she came here specifically to retrieve the spiritual technique from that shelf. This man, since entering the sect, has never cultivated, but even his farts could shake the sect. All the fairy maidens pampered him. Every day he lay on a fairy maiden's fair thighs, enjoying a comfortable massage. He ate watermelon offered by his senior sister, completely at ease. Now even Han Yu, who is considered a goddess by countless male cultivators, has set her sights on Yunkinkyu. As the future sect leader's heir, Han Yu is extremely devoted to cultivation. That spirit technique, she sought that sealed spirit technique. She diligently cultivated for 3 whole months and broke through to the nascent soul stage. She didn't expect that when she returned to the bookshelf, she would find it completely empty, because few disciples ever come to this floor. After she gradually checked, she still found nothing. She then went to the records area. When the man here saw it was Lady Han Yu, he got so nervous he almost dropped the pen in his hand. Han Yu asked him who had recently come to this floor. The man could only answer truthfully. He is a disciple named Yunkinkyu from Kinju Peak. Since Han Yu joined, she had never heard of this person. Could he be a low-key genius? Upon hearing Han Yu's question, the disciple nervously responded. Yunkinkyu is a new disciple from this year. As soon as these words were spoken, Han Yu was stunned. How could a new disciple enter Area B? Was it brought in by an elder? The disciple stammered and recounted the events that had happened earlier. After listening, Han Yu could only feel baffled. Who exactly is Yunkinkyu? This made Han Yu, who usually avoids worldly matters, suddenly develop quite an interest in him. Thus the thought of wanting to see this mysterious young man arose. Meanwhile, Yunkinkyu is enjoying family happiness. Under the sunset, a fairy is giving a knee pillow massage. A fairy is feeding him fruit. Yunkinkyu recalls the words of an immortal cultivator from before. The path of immortality is about experiencing all kinds of suffering to pursue the great Tao. It's all complete nonsense. Life now is much better than back then. That suffering and exhausting nonsense of being immortal is nothing compared to this. Meanwhile, Han Yu pondered. Unknowingly, she arrived at Kinju Peak. She was somewhat excited, finally about to meet that unparalleled talent. She wondered what he looked like. Just as Han Yu was about to land, a sweet untimely sound suddenly came from below. It sounded exactly like the kind of sound you know. Han Yu blushed and looked down. She thought Yunkinkyu was a serious and disciplined cultivator. But what she didn't expect was that this person was a passionate playboy, lingering among the flowers. The difference was just too big. This situation made her very embarrassed. So she turned around and decided to visit again next time. Yunkinkyu was almost drained by the 2 women. He suddenly noticed a cultivator riding a sword in the distance. It was as if he had seen a savior, and he quickly pointed to the sky. Who is that? This made Han Yu, who was just about to fly away, awkwardly stop. When she jumped down from the sky, she seemed like a fairy descending. Miyun was immediately stunned upon seeing the newcomer. She quickly bowed respectfully. Senior sister Han Yu, I didn't know you were coming to Kinju Peak. May I ask what brings you here? Yunkinkyu and Ling Xiaoya exchanged a glance. Is this the rumored future sect leader candidate Han Yu? Because Han Yu is extremely obsessed with cultivation and rarely appears. Cultivation, why did she suddenly appear here today? Miyun was extremely anxious. She really couldn't guess why she suddenly appeared on Kinju Peak. She prayed that nothing major would happen, and Yu wasn't one for beating around the bush. She thought for a moment and decided it was better to be straightforward. She came before Yun Qingyu and asked, "This junior disciple must be the new member, Yun Qingyu. I wonder why this beautiful woman singled me out." But the woman spoke the next moment. "Yun Qingyu, I have some private matters I'd like to discuss with you. Would you mind coming to that small grove to talk?" Ling Xia quickly caught on to the key words. What private matters require a meeting in a small grove? She didn't know when Yun Qingyu had gotten involved with this beautiful senior sister. Doesn't even know about it. The peerless fairy has invited the young man to the woods multiple times. It's no wonder the childhood sweethearts are jealous. Although Ling Xiaoya has a slight smile on her face, Yun Qing can clearly sense the anger coming from her. Even though he really hasn't done anything. I don't know this fairy either. But I still immediately bowed and gave her a good person card. She just needs to explain the matter here. And you nodded slightly. She informed him of the purpose of her visit. So she wanted to study the Xi fragment with Yun Qingyu. At this moment Ling Xia was filled with jealousy. She immediately reached out and pinched his arm. I was really careless. I didn't even know when he captured the fairy's heart. Yun Qingyu could only weep silently. Before he could speak, Ling Xiaoya held her head high and took out the spiritual manual. She told her she was currently studying it and couldn't lend it out. She asked her to go back if she had nothing else to do, and Yu wasn't angry. She also nodded to show her understanding. The next second, she once again invited Yun Qingyu to go with her to the small grove to test his strength. Yun Qingyu was so frightened by her words that he shivered. Even Miyun, who was standing next to him, got goosebumps. On the side, Saya tightly clenched her fists, and even the smile on her face carried a cold, chilling aura. It seemed like she was about to explode at any moment. As she spoke, she slowly raised her arm. "Senior sister, if you're feeling itchy, I can spar with you." Yun Qingyu broke into a cold sweat, almost turning into that. Time also seemed a bit at a loss, and Yu immediately agreed. The two women quickly walked to the open space. To ensure fairness, and Yu suppressed her cultivation to the same level. Ling Xia lowered her head. "Then Xia has offended you." After saying this, Ling Xia darted out like a cunning rabbit. The bluish spiritual energy turned into a water membrane. The shape quickly solidified and became a water blade. It shot toward Hen Yu. Hen Yu slightly tilted her body to dodge the water blade. The cold light emitting a sharp sound suddenly exploded. Immediately after, the swift water blades broke apart into individual, small droplets which all shot out at once. Hen Yu quickly bent backwards and continued to dodge. She couldn't help but be a little surprised. If it weren't for a rich combat experience and sharp senses, she might have really fallen into the trap. She couldn't help but become more focused and serious. Hen Yu instantly delivered a horizontal kick. Ling Xia crossed arms. Spiritual energy condensed on her arms. Though she blocked the strike, she was still forced back several meters. Before she could react, Hen Yu once again charged with crimson spiritual energy. Ling Xia's gaze sharpened. She's very clear in her mind. Even if she dodges that punch, there will still be another strike. If not dealt with properly, she will be severely injured. One is a seductive and slender immortal beauty. The other is a pure and adorable childhood friend. Yet they are fighting fiercely over a young man at this moment. Facing the powerful attack from Hen Yu, the immortal beauty, Ling Xia refused to be outdone. She immediately adjusted her stance, advancing instead of retreating. Hen Yu, though greatly surprised by Ling Xiao's actions, still charged forward recklessly. Then a sudden tearing sound echoed. A powerful gust of air instantly widened the distance between the two. Hen Yu was slightly stunned. The wind palm exploded its spiritual energy before contact, deliberately pushing her away. Indeed, she's clever. The two women's figures intertwined as they continuously fought. It was actually difficult to tell who was winning. The battle intensified. Ling Xia formed hand seal. Spiritual energy rippled like waves. A faint sound of thunder echoed within. She raised her left arm, using the thunderclap technique as well. Just as the two were about to collide, Yun Qingyu dashed between the two women, grasping their wrists. He pulled Ling Xiaoya into his arms and held her close. He gently flung Han Yu away, stopping their fight. Han Yu didn't say anything more. A mere key condensation stage cultivator could give her a feeling of pressure. This made her even more curious about Yun Qingyu's strength. Seeing that it was getting late, she said a few words and returned to Yunqi Peak. That night, Ling Xiaoya tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. She had been worried that the silly boy wouldn't find a wife, but suddenly a woman had contact with him. She couldn't help but feel jealous. It felt like she had worked so hard for 10 years, only for someone to pull up her carefully grown radish. She secretly made up her mind to get closer to Yun Qingyu. She remained vigilant, always on guard for any wrongdoers. The next morning, Ling Xiaoya had changed into her clothes and stood in front of Yun Qingyu. Her delicate and beautiful face immediately made him lose all his sleepiness. Following Ling Xiaoya, they arrived at the sex training square. Yun Qingqi was intentionally and unintentionally guiding her. However, since their arrival, the other disciples lost focus on their training. Many male cultivators occasionally glanced at the pure and adorable girl, feeling a heavy and envious sensation in their chests. Just as everyone was feeling down, a sudden uproar came from behind. Is that Fairy Han Yu? She's even more beautiful than the rumors say. My goodness, am I really not dreaming? The people in the square slowly dispersed, making way for Han Yu. Their eyes were fixed on the sex number one goddess. Han Yu ignored everyone and headed straight for the edge of the square. Ling Xiaoya, however, looked alert and quickly shielded Yun Qingqi behind her. Han Yu quickly arrived in front of the two of them. Yun Qingqi, I couldn't sleep last night, thinking about it all night. Ling Xiaoya, although feeling very displeased inside, still managed to show a faint smile on her face. Qingqi, what do you think? This stunning fairy actually said, in front of everyone, that she's interested in a new disciple of the sect. She is the goddess of the sect after all. It seems that even this guy is involved in the matter. Ling Xiaoya smiled faintly. She quietly waited for his response. Yun Qingqi's mouth twitched slightly. He felt there must be something fishy about this. So he turned to senior sister Han Yu and asked what exactly she intended to do. Han Yu casually pointed to the side. There's nothing to discuss. Just come with me to that small grove over there. Seeing that Ling Xiaoya's anger was only growing stronger, Yun Qingqi asked her to speak her mind. Han Yu thought for a moment. I visited you last night but got no result. Now I want to try something if that's alright. As soon as the words were spoken, the male cultivators immediately felt their heads buzzing. Cracking sound came from their hearts. Damn, is it possible that Fairy Han Yu wants to submit to him? Yun Qingqi could no longer stand listening. She immediately agreed to compete with her. She spoke as she rolled up her sleeves. She took a step forward and stood in front of Han Yu. Han Yu was slightly stunned. She actively lowered her cultivation to the same level. The moment Yun Qingqi agreed to her, she had already made her plans in her heart. Isn't this just to test my own strength? Then bring it on. After he suppressed all of his spiritual energy, Yun Qingqi tensed his body and swung his fist forward. Han Yu's expression was serious, completely treating it as a battle of the same level. She quickly conjured a flame above her palm, and with the infusion of spiritual energy it rapidly condensed. It transformed into seven-headed spikes shooting forward. Yun Qingqi naturally had to put on a show. With changing hand seals, wind blades spread outward. The moment they collided, puffs of green smoke erupted. At that moment, Han Yu suddenly appeared before Yun Qingqi. She unleashed a flurry of attacks upon him. Yun Qingqi, however, used wind blades to continue expanding outward, meeting the attack. For a time, Han Yu was forced onto the defensive. Nevertheless, she was extremely excited. This junior brother truly mastered the wind control technique, just as the rumors said. At this moment, Han Yu kept swinging her wooden sword, shattering the wind blades one after another. She was engaged in a close combat struggle with Yun Qingqi. They were evenly matched in their exchange of blows. The more Han Yu fought, the more excited she became. With your strength, as a foundation establishment cultivator, you should be able to handle this. Saying that, she immediately launched an attack. Then a solid impact came from the blow to his hand. Yun Qingqi flew backward like a broken kite. He crashed heavily to the ground. Han Yu was stunned. It was just a light push without any added force. It shouldn't have even hit him. Yun Qingqi, sitting on the ground, gave her a thumbs up. As expected of senior sister Han, amazing, I admit defeat. And you stood frozen in place, staring at her hand. If she lost directly, this woman would definitely not believe it. Ling Xiaoya hurried over and hugged Yun Qingqi. The advanced healing elixir Kunglian Du. She will take full responsibility. Mian was also very surprised. So she became more serious about studying beauty techniques. 1. A secret location. He cautiously laid out spirit arrays everywhere. His divine sense spread to the distant void. He communicated with the divine beast he had made a soul contract with to summon it. Immediately, a pillar of light connected the spirit array in the dark clouds. The huge and magnificent phantom of the spirit beast gradually appeared. Intricate patterns gradually appeared on his body. The strongest cultivator unexpectedly had his soul transmigrated into a young boy. But unexpectedly, this body had died from being forcibly violated by a demonic beast. His physical body was already very weak, while his primordial spirit was exceptionally strong. Added to that, the contract intermittently drained his life force. This further accelerated the depletion of his life force. Yunkinkyu was forced to summon the divine beast because of this. Shu Ding closed her eyes and slowly sensed his physical condition. Her brows furrowed, her expression becoming quite grave. After pondering for a while, she slowly spoke. "Are you human or ghost?" Yunkinkyu slammed her palm on her head. "Damn, I'm your grandfather?" Through the earlier inspection by Shu Ding, she sensed that this body was like an empty shell. It lacked vitality. It didn't even seem alive. And the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth that this body originally possessed were forcibly removed. His body's yang energy is almost completely depleted. It can be determined that it was forcibly extracted by a female demon through intercourse. Logically, he should be completely defunct. But because of Yunkinkyu's soul transfer, his primordial spirit has recovered a little vitality, like a withered tree encountering spring. However, recently a strange force has been continuously draining his life force. This further accelerates the depletion of his life. Yunkinkyu's expression gradually became serious. "It seems like I must come up with a plan." At that moment, Shu suddenly bowed respectfully. Then he patted his chest and assured his master, "Don't worry, as long as we suck her, it will temporarily resolve the crisis." Yunkinkyu then threw a jade vial at him from his chest. Then he waved his hand. He did want to use sleeping liquid to heal. "Let's you try another method." A blush crept on Shu's usually serious face. "That's not very good, is it?" Yunkinkyu rolled up their sleeves, resorting to intimidation. "I've raised you for 5,000 years. And you dare refuse to give me just a little something good?" Shu's face flushed crimson, and they fidgeted for a while. Finally they agreed. There was even a hint of determination in her eyes. "Fine, if you have to pee, then just do it." It looked like she was about to take action. Yunkinkyu was so frantic that she almost jumped up. She grabbed Shu Ding's small face and kept squeezing and rubbing it. "You idiot, and you dare call yourself a divine beast? You can twist anything in your mind." She scolded him sternly. "Who the fastress?" She said, "That's all there is to Vermilion Bird's body fluid. There's blood, isn't there? Bleed me." She put her finger to her mouth and bit it. Carefully, she dripped the blood into the jade bottle. Then she handed it to her master. Following this, Yunkinkyu took out a scroll from her sleeve. She asked her to write down the necessary herbs. Shu's fingers moved through the air a few times. The scroll immediately displayed a dense array of characters. After confirming that everything was correct, Shu Ding rolled up the scroll, held it carefully, and returned it to Yunkinkyu. She said cautiously, "Currently the young master has sent 10,000 cultivators to find you, and each one is equipped with a full set of spiritual tools." Upon hearing this, Yunkinkyu immediately shuddered. "Damn it, Xiaobei, does that stubborn fool really have to be this persistent?" He followed Shuyao's finger. Indeed, several powerful cultivators were flying on swords in the clouds. Looking around, he lowered his head and pondered for a moment. "I'm afraid I'll have to be even more careful in hiding my identity from now on." He was a newly enrolled disciple, but he unexpectedly awakened a dual mutated spiritual root. Even though he had tried his best to suppress his cultivation, but he still couldn't escape the judgment of the talent tree. The elders were determined to make him bring glory to his family, but all he wanted was to quietly flirt with girls. Since the day the third elder witnessed Yunkinkyu's talent assessment result, he decided to immediately return to the sect and report this matter. At this moment, he had gathered all the elders together. His tone was still slightly excited as he spoke. After thinking it over, he felt that on that day, they had underestimated this new disciple. Recently, Yunkinkyu not only learned the wind control technique, but also defeated Suxiu at a higher level. He was even tested and found to have B-class aptitude, due to his outstanding performance. Elder 3 couldn't help but suspect that this kid may have already found a way to break through the limitations of his dual mutated spiritual roots. However, Elder 2 expressed dissatisfaction with this. He believes that the wind control technique is originally suited for those with wind spiritual roots to practice. He was just a blind cat stumbling upon a dead rat. As for defeating his disciple Sushu, it was simply that fool being careless and falling into the trap. As for that test tree, it was only set up for ordinary disciples. It must have many discrepancies with mutated spiritual roots. The third elder was left speechless by his words. Just then Hanyu walked in. She hurriedly bowed and greeted everyone. She's recently hit a wall in her cultivation. Lacking the opportunity for a breakthrough, she decided to leave seclusion early. The sect leader was overjoyed. He presumed she was about to break through to the mid-stage of the core formation realm. To reach this level after only 2 years of training, she truly is his exceptional disciple. The sect leader felt refreshed and invigorated. He immediately promised to grant her any request she might have. And you did not hesitate for a moment. She immediately made her request. She hoped that her master could bring Yun Kinkyu Yunki Peak. Through their brief encounter, she could feel that he might be the strongest among the new disciples. Such a talent should not be wasted. The sect leader stood up and helped her up. After all, the sect did not possess the method to counter dual mutated spiritual roots. He had no choice but to put this matter aside for now. With the sect's major exam approaching, he asked Yu to go back and prepare well. Meanwhile, as soon as it got light, Yun Kinkyu decided to immediately return to find Ling Xiaya. He entered and saw the two of them moving things, because Miyun had received an urgent letter from senior sister Lu. After confirming that there was no issue with the luggage, Miyun took out a storage ring. Pack all those bags. Just as she was about to leave, Saya quickly reminded her that she hadn't taken the pouch. And she also forgot the camisole. Ling Saya was somewhat speechless. She really couldn't feel at ease. So she suggested that Yun Kinkyu go with her. Yun Kinkyu did not object. Luling City is a major trading hub for the merchant guilds. There must be some rare materials there. And Ling Xiaoya is on the verge of a breakthrough. So she decided to stay and continue her cultivation. This man, because his physical condition was too poor, summoned a divine beast to treat him. To prevent the divine beast from revealing its identity, he personally went into the world to search for herbs. The two of them quickly arrived at the bustling Luling City, riding on spiritual beasts. As soon as Muyun landed, she immediately ran ahead, pulling him along. At the same time, a tall, beautiful girl with long legs was walking back and forth at the city gate. Upon seeing senior sister Lu, Muyun stood on tiptoe and waved. She pulled Yun Kinkyu and squeezed through the crowd. She first took them on a tour around the city for some fun. Only when the sky began to darken did she take them back to the guild. Yun Kinkyu didn't expect his senior sister to be the young miss of the Lu Trading Company. But what intrigued him was what exactly happened at his senior sister's home that kept her from returning to Kinji Peak for so long. Lu Yuanji sighed softly. The area around Luling City is rich in spiritual energy, with fertile land and abundant medicinal herbs. Decades of accumulation gradually turned Muzhou Prefecture into a famous city of elixirs. The city lord organizes alchemy competition to promote local alchemy development. With high rewards, they attract participation from various families. Their merchant guild is only of average to above average level, and they don't have particularly strong alchemists. They maintain a best-ender attitude towards the alchemy competition. However, a while ago, the old man's old injuries recurred. The famous doctor in the city told her that she urgently needed a flame spirit fruit to prepare the prescription. And this herb happened to be the prize in this alchemy competition. With no other choice, she could only ask Miyun to help. Don't look at her as a foodie, but she has a primary fire spiritual root. She's quite skilled in manipulating fire attribute energy, although her cultivation is average. But she has some real skill in alchemy. Miyun proudly took out her storage ring. She carefully searched inside. As the smoke slowly dissipated, there was a lace-trimmed, sheer one-piece lingerie. The design was very bold. Just looking at it made one's imagination run wild. She confidently did even glance at it. Lu Yuanji turned her head away, unable to bear to look directly. Is this the surprise you gave me? I have underwear and I don't like this kind. Upon hearing this, Miyun glanced upward. Her facial expression changed rapidly. A frantic shout nearly blew the roof off. She hurriedly hid the item. Blushing, she curled up on the chair. If I say this isn't mine, would you believe me? Lu Yuanji waved her hand and quickly nodded. Meanwhile, Yun Kinkyu silently gave a thumbs up. I didn't expect that the usually dull junior sister would have such a wild side inside. Miyun was hiding at the side, trembling in fear. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to show leniency. She wore it to help with body shaping and slimming. As soon as she said this, both of them were stunned. Could it be that such a large amount of Mayan is still hidden? Junior sister, upon receiving senior sister Lu's urgent letter, without a word brought all her belongings to Luling City. The next morning, Lua Lin, the steward of the Luo Trading Company, came knocking. She specially invited Mian to the company's backyard to prepare medicine. Mian also got up early and made ample preparations. Yesterday's events were somewhat embarrassing. Today I must reinvent myself. I'll show everyone what I can do. On the butler's orders, the servants bustled about moving things. They quickly tidied up the backyard. Mian expressed her satisfaction. She signaled for Lu Lin to stop working. Meanwhile, Lu Yuanji also arrived in the backyard. Smiling, she stood behind Miyun. It's all up to you these few days. Add oil. Miyun quickly took out the jade box she had prepared earlier. She turned around and handed it to Lu Yuanji. This is the gift I properly prepared. Yesterday's was a complete accident. Lu Yuanji carefully opened the jade box. A rich medicinal fragrance gushed out from the gap. The entire backyard was instantly filled with the scent of medicinal pills. Miyun explained somewhat awkwardly. Because Kinju Peak always finishes last in the sect's grand competition, she thought of accumulating some pills to boost their score. So, during this period, whenever she had free time, she would make pills. Now that senior sister is in trouble, she could only take them out in advance for emergency use. Lulin happily took the jade box. These pills are enough to keep the merchant guild running for a while. She made a gesture to the servant in the courtyard. At this moment, Mu Yun took an old medicinal cauldron out of her storage ring. Yun Kinky's eyes instantly lit up. Curiously, she circled around the cauldron, examining it closely. Mu Yun put on an apron-like robe. A layer of crimson spiritual energy quickly surrounded her. Unhurriedly, she placed various herbs into the cauldron. Even Lo Yuanzi couldn't help but praise. When Mu Yun was refining medicine, it was as if she had changed. The cauldron in front of her, after only 5 years, was already at this level. Such talent and diligence. No one of her peers in the alchemy sect could surpass her. As soon as the words were spoken, a loud explosion rang in everyone's ears. Suddenly, smoke spread and filled the air. The furnace had exploded. Mu Yun coughed while waving the smoke away as she walked out. Her face was slightly scorched. Lu Yuanji hurried forward to express her concern. She had just boosted so much to her junior brother. How did the furnace explode? Mu Yun smiled and pointed to the apron on her body. It was bought for her by Master. It has fireproof and heat-resistant properties. She quickly walked towards the medicinal cauldron. Once she gets the feel for it, it will be fine. Mu Yun continued refining with great seriousness. After several explosions in the furnace, Lu Yuanji was stunned, unable to react. Why is this happening more and more frequently? If this keeps up, the entire yard might be destroyed. Lu Yuanji, afraid of getting caught in the explosion, ran off to handle the guild affairs. Yun Kinkyu isn't afraid of explosion. His attention fell on the medicine cauldron. To have lasted this long in little Shiji's hands, this thing is definitely no ordinary item. I just praised her outstanding talent a second ago, and the next second she's performing a spectacular cauldron explosion. Little Shiji, you really are something. After a half-hour-long series of cauldron explosions, Mu-Yun finally got into the zone. The refined herbs gradually took the shape of a pill. A moment later, the rich fragrance of the pill filled the air. The slightly warm pill landed in Mu-Yun's hand. At her age, she could refine top-tier pills. Soon Mu-Yun carefully stored the pill. Seeing that Yun Kinkyu seemed to show some interest in alchemy, she quickly began searching through her storage ring. Shyly warned him. If you look again, I'll tell Xiaoya. Yun Kinkyu gave an awkward smile. He immediately shifted his gaze to the scroll. The pills were still being continuously refined. Unknowingly, he had been watching for 4 or 5 hours straight. He stood up and stretched. Although the content on alchemy was extensive and complex, but for him, it has already been deeply engraved in his mind. At this moment, Mu-Yun is still focused on refining pills. The senior sister doesn't know where she's busy. Yun Kinkyu had just walked out of the backyard when he smelled the scent of refined medicinal pills. Following the scent, he passed through the corridor and courtyard, arriving at a building. A plaque hanging there read Medicine Refining Hall. There are more than 10 medicinal cauldrons inside. Many alchemists are manipulating the flames to refine the medicinal herbs. Yun Kinkyu looked around. He finally spotted a vacant medicinal cauldron. He walked over to it. A middle-aged alchemist next to him shot him a sideways glare. His tone was extremely arrogant. You're a new alchemist, aren't you? It looks somewhat unfamiliar. Yun Kinkyu glanced at him. The middle-aged alchemist shouted loudly. If you're not here for anything, get out. Lu Lin hurried over after hearing the noise. She immediately stepped forward to ask, Master Zhang Ming, what's going on? And Zhang Ming, relying on the fact that he's now the most powerful alchemist here, the arrogant face wanted to drive him out. Lorraine hurriedly intervened. This young man is the young master's junior, a distinguished guest of the Merchant Association. Zhang Ming, due to the young master's identity, didn't dare to continue making things difficult. However, Yun Kinkyu was holding in a lot of anger. If Lorraine hadn't arrived in time, this guy would have already been shoved into the furnace. This boy was unexpectedly drawn to the pill refining hall by the fragrance of medicine. But unexpectedly, as soon as he entered, he was arrogantly driven away by a villain. Hearing the commotion, Lorraine hurried over. She immediately felt a headache coming on. These two, one is the young Mrs. Junior Marshall brother, and a distinguished guest of the Chamber of Commerce, and the other is the Chamber of Commerce's current top-level alchemist. Neither is someone she can afford to offend. After a moment's hesitation, she could only lead Yun Kinkyu to a secluded corner. She clasped her hands together and asked Yun Kinkyu to be more tolerant. Yun Kinkyu didn't want to make things difficult for the young steward. He waved his hand and told her it didn't matter where he refined it. Yun Kinkyu carefully wiped the alchemy cauldron clean. But little did he know Zhang Ming, like a dog, would attack anyone he could. He couldn't tolerate even the slightest sound. Yun Kinkyu shot him a sideways glare. I channeled a wisp of spiritual energy. If I weren't afraid of troubling senior sister, this thing would have been tossed into the furnace long ago. Several alchemists nearby were surprised. Seeing how clumsy this young man's movements were, they were astonished that he could conjure flames on his first try. This remark immediately reached Jiang Ming's ears. He loudly rebuked the two. However, she still did not take Yun Qingqiu seriously in her heart. Lu Lin was afraid that Jiang Ming would continue to cause trouble, so she stayed here temporarily. Moreover, she knew that becoming an alchemist was not something just anyone could do. As soon as Yun Qingqiu lost interest, she would just comfort him and have him leave. After feeling the temperature of the flames was about right, Yun Qingqiu closed his eyes and recalled the steps of alchemy. With a slight movement of his mind, he levitated several herbs above the cauldron. Then he crushed them. He tossed them all into the furnace without hesitation. Lauren wanted to remind him, but it was already too late. Although she wasn't an alchemist, she understood some basic knowledge of alchemy. It was best to refine the herbs one by one. Focusing on refining them properly was the key. It seems his junior brother is not only an outsider, he doesn't even understand the most basic steps of alchemy. Under the scorching heat of the flames, several herbs gradually began to fuse together. Soon the shape of a pill gradually emerged. Lu Lin was completely dumbfounded. Refining so many herbs at once and actually succeeding, those flames are extremely obedient under Yun Qingqiu's control. Even his technique is both elegant and aesthetically pleasing. Meanwhile, Jiang Ming is unaware of this. According to his calculations, this young man will either burn the medicine to ash or fail to melt it. There's even a chance he might cause a furnace explosion, a beginner's mistake, just because he dared to ignore me earlier. Jiang Ming is determined to show him through action that not just anyone can become an alchemist. With his decades of profound experience, a pill with an enticing fragrance slowly floated out. All the surrounding alchemists were drawn to the scent. It turned out to be a top-grade pill. He truly deserves to be called Master Zhang. He's incredible. Jiang Ming felt refreshed from all the flattery. He felt like his life had reached its peak. This young man has already crafted a top-tier pill on his first try. Even so, he was still subjected to the alchemist's strong ridicule. Just as Jiang Ming was feeling proud, he suddenly noticed that Lorraine wasn't looking at him. Instead, she had been intently focused on Yun Qingqiu. Jiang Ming crossed his arms and wore a very sarcastic smile. Humph, let's see how long you can hold out. After a while, the group of alchemists also turned their attention to Yun Qingqiu. Even the smile on Jiang Ming's face gradually disappeared. He felt that this kid was getting a bit too lucky. A few minutes later, a refreshing medicinal fragrance accompanied by wisps of blue smoke emerged from the medicinal cauldron. Yun Qingqiu's fingers moved slightly. The pill, emitting a faint smoke, landed in his hand. The alchemists present were all greatly shocked. He actually refined it. What the hell is this? And it's top-tier quality on the first attempt. This is unbelievable. Only Yun Qing glanced casually at the pill. Is this really just top-tier quality? Then, in front of everyone, she threw it away. It's not even top grade. If it's ruined, try again. Lorraine hurriedly caught the pill. She held it in her hands, her eyes filled with sorrow. A high-grade first-tier pill could be worth half a month's salary for her. How could she just throw it away? Yun Qingqiu turned around and took several more medicinal ingredients from the cabinet. He said casually, "If a pill is ruined, what's the point of keeping a useless one?" The surrounding alchemists were talking among themselves. You tell me this is a useless pill, but it's of top quality. Jiang Ming was so angry his teeth itched. This was a blatant humiliation to him. A few minutes later, under everyone's gaze, a pill with perfect luster and aura was born from the cauldron. One could tell at a glance that this was a top-tier pill. He turned to Lauren. "The Chamber of Commerce, if you don't mind, take it." Lauren excitedly reached out her hands immediately. Yes, we want it." Yun Qingqiu casually tossed the pill to her. Lauren carefully and quickly put it away. She didn't even dare let others take another look. Without saying a word, she hurried to find the young miss. Meanwhile, Lu Yuanji was quietly watching Mu Yun refine pills in the backyard. Mu Yun was also very focused. She knew that this pill refining conference was crucial to her senior sister's grandfather's illness. She absolutely couldn't be careless. Moreover, as long as she could refine one more top-grade pill, the Chamber of Commerce's operation would be much easier. She anxiously hoped she could refine another top-grade pill. I never expected that it was just an ordinary pill. She was very afraid that her poor performance would delay her senior's plans. She even suggested that her senior could bring back the previous chief alchemist. The junior sister focused on alchemy to help the senior sister fulfill her wish. But to her surprise, the success rate was still under 60%. How will she propose the idea of bringing back the previous alchemist? Lu Yuanzi slightly shook her head. With a grim expression, she told her that the alchemist, upon learning that her grandfather was ill, took the opportunity to pressure her into marriage. He even threatened her with it. If she didn't marry him, he would leave the guild, and Mu Yun was the best alchemist she could find right now. But given the current situation, it's almost impossible to get that herb. She helplessly slammed her fist on the table. Am I really going to lose someone important? Memories involuntarily flooded her mind. Large tears fell from her eyes. Am I really going to submit to that guy? Just then Lauren ran over excitedly. She was breathless, gasping for air. This startled Lu Wenji. She thought something had happened to the Chamber of Commerce. Lulin quickly adjusted her breathing and told her that the Chamber of Commerce was stable. Then she took out a jade box from her bosom. Lu Wenji curiously opened it. A strong fragrance of medicinal pills filled the air. Both of them immediately widened their beautiful eyes. This is actually a top-grade pill. Lu Yuanji immediately asked her where she got it. She silently pondered for a moment. Zhang Ming couldn't possibly have done this. Could it be that Liu Xiao, who once threatened her, has returned? Lu Lin got angry at the mere mention of him. She stated firmly that it wasn't that guy. Then, she couldn't help but tell the two with a hint of delight. The person who refined this kind of pill is Yun Kinkyu. As soon as these words were spoken, both of them were stunned. After all, before this, they had never heard that junior brother knew how to refine pills. Moreover, he had just been asking Myun for advice. How'd it possibly be him? Seeing that they didn't believe it, Lu Lin decided to take them to see for themselves. But they hadn't entered yet. They saw a group of cultivators going crazy at the door. None of them were willing to believe that after 20 years of hard work refining pills, they were still outdone by a young brat who didn't even understand basic knowledge. Even Zhang Ming, standing nearby, was so frustrated he kept slamming into the wall. Lulin looked around for a while but didn't spot Yun Kinkyu anywhere. So she pulled a few alchemists over to have them recount the situation. After hearing everyone's account, both of them couldn't help but gasp in shock. Junior brother is truly terrifying. At this moment, Yun Kinkyu was leisurely strolling down the street. He arrived in front of a street stall selling novels. After listening to the vendor's introduction, without a second thought, he picked up a yellow-covered book. Just as he was about to reach for his money, he paused slightly. It seemed like he didn't have a single coin on him. The first thing this man did after entering the world was to buy a yellow-covered book. Fortunately, a few of his senior sisters arrived just in time. Without saying a word, they bought everything for him. They even dragged him back to their home. But as soon as they returned home, the door was locked behind them. They all smiled and stared at him. Before he could react, one of them asked him seriously if he was really an alchemist. Yun Kinkyu gave an awkward smile. He quickly gave her a negative answer. But Lu Lin, standing nearby, interrupted him. In Luling City, there are only 3 people who can refine top-tier grade 1 pills. Moreover, even Miss Mu can't do it. How could he not be able to? Yun Kinkyu was instantly surprised. He never expected even junior sister Xiao couldn't do it. I just wanted to have some fun. Did I go too far this time? Lu Wanji suddenly asked him to refine it again in front of everyone. Miyun, who was standing beside them, was also very curious. She kept asking Yun Kinkyu to demonstrate his alchemy skills. Seeing this, Yun Kinkyu agreed. He calmly circulated his spiritual energy. He waited until a vigorous flame appeared in the cauldron before starting the refinement. Amidst the surprised gazes of everyone, a top-quality elixir quickly appeared in his hand. Yun Kinkyu casually tossed it to Lu Yuanji. Lu Yuanji was stunned and frantically caught it. After witnessing his power, she immediately decided to leave the task of participating in the competition to him. With a look of pleading and expectation, her tone even carried a hint of coquettishness. How could Yun Kinkyu withstand such an attack? Lu Yuanji, overjoyed, hugged Yun Kinkyu tightly. Miyun and Lu Lin were instantly flustered. Yun Kinkyu gestured for them to leave. Then she gently placed her hand on her shoulder. She listened attentively to her confession. Everyone thought she, a girl, wouldn't be able to hold on. The family alchemist was also ineffective, and the former chief alchemist took advantage of her weakness to force her into marriage. He silently memorized the name Lu Zhao in his heart, then he wiped away his senior sister's tears. Don't worry. At the alchemy conference, I will definitely crush all those chambers of commerce that bullied you. An unprecedented feeling surged through her heart. This man could casually refine top-grade pills. After witnessing his prowess, Lu Yuanji immediately decided to entrust him with the competition. Yun Kinkyu was assigned a separate alchemy area. It couldn't have been better, and every day Lu Lin would bring snacks made by senior sister Lu herself to pamper him. This made her feel that the act was rather like a young lady trying to please her beloved, but she quickly convinced herself it was impossible. She's just a senior sister and junior brother. It shouldn't be that chaotic. Just as she was about to leave, she seemed to suddenly remember something. She turned around and told Yun Kinkyu. Indeed encountered a difficult problem. As long as he can refine a second-grade high-quality pill, victory would be assured. But right now, no matter what he does, it's still top-grade quality. He suddenly realized he was losing control. Yun Kinkyu was extremely frustrated. Now people from Wubian Pavilion are searching everywhere. Refining top-quality pills at 16 will definitely attract their attention. He didn't want to go back with them. He still wanted to continue playing with the girl here. He really didn't expect that he wouldn't know how to become weaker. It had become his biggest headache. Lauren was a bit confused by what he said. Yun Kinkyu didn't expect her to be of any help, so he sent her away. Then he tried the medicine cauldron a few more times on his own. In a fit of anger, he decided to quit. Rather than staying here and getting frustrated, he might as well go out for a walk and clear his mind. He might even find something useful. He quickly arrived at the black market in Luling City. But it's much faster than the efficiency of the surface-level chamber. His arrival quickly caught the attention of a shirtless man. The shirtless man walked straight over and stood in front of Yun Kinkyu. Before he could even say anything, Yun Kinkyu swiftly dodged and appeared behind him. Then with one kick, he swept the man's legs out from under him. As the man fell, Yun Kinkyu had already stepped on him. He asked him where the largest black chamber of commerce was. The shirtless man glared fiercely at Yun Kinkyu. He shouted loudly, demanding that Yun Kinkyu let go. Yun Kinkyu pressed down hard with his heel. If he exerted the slightest more force, the man's arm would be destroyed. The man winced in pain, baring his teeth. Through gritted teeth, he revealed the location of the guild. But as soon as Yun Kinkyu released his foot, the man quickly reached for a dagger from behind. It's a pity that before I could look away, I was suddenly flipped over. My body uncontrollably flew backward. I didn't stop until I hit the wall with a dull thud. The onlookers were all shocked and terrified. They obediently returned to their original positions, not daring to act recklessly, waiting to find their next prey. This man desperately wanted to hide his identity. But his casual moves were enough to shock everyone. Extremely depressed, he decided to go out for a walk to clear his head. In a short while, he found the largest merchant guild in this black market. As soon as he entered, he saw a woman wearing a fox mask. The woman quickly scanned him. Immediately, she categorized him as a newbie. Politely, the woman asked him whether he wanted to buy or sell goods. Yun Kinkyu told her that he wanted to both buy and sell goods. Without a word, the woman decided to take him to the selling area first. Yun Kinkyu knew exactly what their game was. They just wanted to see if she had any valuable treasures. Only those with high net worth would be considered for further service. She immediately chose the cheapest trading area. Only those utterly destitute would go to the lowest level trading area. Finding that she couldn't get anything valuable from the boy, the woman turned and left without a second thought. Fortunately, the entrance to the lowest level trading area is poorly decorated. It's easy to find. After passing through the dark tunnel, you enter the hall. Inside there are individual windows. The black cat receptionist, stretching her tired back, was about to leave. However, when she saw Yun Kinkyu, she immediately straightened up. Yun Kinkyu told her that she had come to handle some pills. The black cat receptionist was silent for a moment. I couldn't help but feel doubtful. Dressed simply and so young, could she really be a noble alchemist? But she still patiently received him, asking him to place the pill on the counter for appraisal. The black cat asked Yun Kinkyu to wait a moment. She then picked up the jade box, carefully opening it. The strong medicinal fragrance immediately cleared the black cat's groggy mind. The black cat hurriedly got up and unlocked the window door. She invited Yun Kinkyu to sit at her seat. She couldn't help but secretly rejoice inside. This deal was equivalent to handling the total transaction amount of several decades. If the deal was successful, what a huge achievement that would be. In a moment of urgency, she thought of herself. She had heard that those high-end clients often had some peculiar preferences. It seems like I won't be at a loss either. She knelt beside Yun Kinkyu, looking embarrassed. Blushing, she said shyly, "Excuse me, is it okay if I use my hands? I don't have much experience, but I'll try my best." Her words left Yun Kinkyu completely stunned. "If that doesn't work, I could also use my mouth." Yun Kinkyu's face instantly turned red. What is this black cat receptionist trying to do? A man's first time in the black market, and he receives this kind of treatment. The black cat woman, in order to entertain him well, has thought of every possible way, using both her hands and her mouth. This left Yun Kinkyu completely at a loss. He sat there, his face flushed. Her dedication is unparalleled. However, he quickly pushed the black cat attendant aside and told her that as long as she handled things for him quickly, it would be fine. He really did need any help. The black cat hesitated for a moment, then immediately stood up, shaking in fear, and handed him several documents, asking him to sign them here. Yun Kinkyu didn't hesitate at all. He neatly signed his name on them. The black cat stared blankly at the writing on the document. Tears of excitement welled up in my eyes. I really can't believe it was so simple. She became my client. She asked Yun Kinkyu to wait for a moment. She wiped away her tears and quickly ran out. After about half an hour, footsteps were heard in the lobby. A richly dressed middle-aged man came into the lobby. Behind him followed a black cat and a group of stewards. He also informed him of his alias Explosive Leopard. But Yun King continued to drink tea with his head down. Not even revealing his real name is a bit too perfunctory. Explosive Leopard's face was serious. In a place like the black market, everyone tries their best to hide their names, and his name is even more taboo. The man in front of him immediately asked for his name upon meeting. Could it be that he wants to control him? Based on his years of experience, he could tell that this young man was definitely not simple. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to speak up. I am Bobo, the president here. May I ask your name, sir? As soon as he finished speaking, the tea in Yun Kinkyu's mouth sprayed all over Baba's face. I coughed for a long time before recovering. You, a muscular man with a rough appearance, broad shoulders, and a thick waist, are called Liao Bao. The people behind obviously hadn't heard the president's name either. They couldn't help but laugh. Lai Baba turned around and glared. A wave of killing intent spread. It scared those people into immediately kneeling on the ground. Yun Kinkyu immediately mediated the situation. But I couldn't help laughing hysterically. Lai Bao exploding Babao. It's clear your parents love you very much. Ha 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 ha. After a long while, Yun Kinkyu finally stopped laughing. This time, he's here to handle the goods. We'll wait for his appraisal. Lai Bao immediately became serious. He invited him to discuss it in a different location. Lai Bao led Yun Kinkyu through a long tunnel. Soon he arrived at a lavishly decorated hall. Upon entering, he had the door locked. Several black cats served him inside. They constantly bustled about with drinks and snacks, and each one was strikingly beautiful. This man ventured alone into the black market to collect herbs. Because the pills he offered were extremely valuable, he attracted the attention of the local kingpin. After being seated, Lai Bao inquired about the origin of the pill from Yun Kinkyu. Yun Kinkyu waved a hand dismissively, assuring her, its origins are above board, I simply need some money. But Lai Bao remained unconvinced. After all, such pills are rarely seen. She had to be cautious. Yun Kinkyu was suddenly speechless. Why wouldn't she trust something I myself refined? If you don't believe me, I can demonstrate it live with a medicinal cauldron. Lai Bao was momentarily stunned. Two burly men then carried over a brand new medicinal cauldron. This medicinal cauldron has a chance to improve the quality of the potion. It enhances the control over the flame and spiritual power. Yun Kinkyu was suddenly taken aback upon hearing this. Only then did she understand what was really going on. The broken medicinal cauldron that had been placed in the corner earlier, it's equivalent to a damaged spiritual tool. Not only does it not amplify, but also increases the difficulty of alchemy. It intentionally honed Yun Kinkyu's alchemy skills. Afterward, when he switched to the high-level cauldron provided by Lu Lin, he couldn't adapt. That's when it became difficult to improve the quality of the pills. Lai Bao asked in suspicion if there was something wrong. Yun Kinkyu waved his hand. It's nothing, the cauldron is just too easy to use, I'm not used to it. Immediately his robe fluttered. A current of air spread outward from his entire body. In a short while the hall was filled with powerful spiritual pressure fluctuations. Lai Bao was startled. This was actually a mutated wind spirit root. This young man is truly extraordinary. Then one by one, herbs floated in order into the medicine cauldron. In a short while the shape of a pill emerged. Yun Kinkyu lightly curled his finger. The refined pill then appeared in his palm. Lai Bao trembled as he stared at the pill. He then made an offer to Yun Kinkyu to buy it. Yun Kinkyu couldn't be bothered to haggle with him. Despite his calm and collected appearance, he was secretly feeling pleased inside. Conservatively speaking, he could make at least 20,000 spirit stones from this. I won't have to worry about money for a while. Lai Bao picked it up and looked at it. He immediately instructed his assistant to take care of it. The black market was extremely efficient. In just half an hour, they had gathered all the materials Yun Kinkyu needed. Lai Bao took out a delicate storage ring. The materials he requested are all inside. Unfortunately, they're out of stock of the heavenly abundance grass. However, a few days later, the rewards for the top positions in the alchemy competition will include it. With your strength, it should be a piece of cake for you to obtain. He also conveniently gave him this storage ring and medicinal cauldron. His mind was as clear as a mirror. This old fox has already started trying to find ways to flatter me. But I actually do have a small matter that requires his help. This man is so powerful that he has attracted the attention of the biggest boss in the black market, who now wants to flatter him. Lai Bao listened respectfully. He was quite pleased. The favor of a fourth-rank alchemist is far more valuable than spirit stones, so Yun Kinkyu mentioned the Luo Trading Company to him. Several reckless troublemakers were secretly making trouble. It annoyed him greatly. He ordered Lai Babao to investigate those troublemakers, and to deal with them severely, the more the better, and make sure they stay alive. Let them savor the taste of bankruptcy. Lai Babao immediately felt nervous after hearing this. He knew clearly that the forces besieging the Luo Trading Company were no ordinary group. Many trading companies in Luling City were in cahoots with the city lord. If the black market suddenly intervened, they would certainly be suppressed. Yin Qinkyu waved his hand. He didn't want to listen to these nonsense. He told him in a very calm tone, "There is nothing that can't be done, only whether it is done or not." Then he patted Lai Boba's shoulder. He knew that just relying on these elixir transactions to get him to do these things was indeed a bit difficult, so he took out a jade bottle from his chest as a reward, and he instructed him to do it beautifully. Lai Baba hesitated and was about to refuse, but he could tell this wasn't a discussion. It was an unquestionable order. He curiously opened the jade bottle. The next second, his expression suddenly changed drastically. Inside were actually 2 top-grade third-rank pills. This man before him was actually a 5th-rank alchemist. Lai Baba was so scared that he collapsed directly onto the ground. He never expected that he would encounter such a genius in the small city of Luling. Let alone Luling. No one in the entire Kanglin domain could do anything to him. He secretly speculated that this man was not a young person at all. He must have practiced some profound beauty technique to appear this way. The surrounding stewards looked at each other in confusion. I don't understand why the well-traveled president is so scared. I can't help but be curious about what could be inside the jade bottle. But a single glance from Lai Bao makes them shrink back in fear. Lai Bao was well aware in his heart, if the Black Merchant Guild had such a powerful backer, why would they be confined to the small city of Luling? He immediately cupped his hands and bowed. Your Excellency's orders will be carried out to the best of my ability. If the master is willing, he would even offer himself. Yin Qinkyu was slightly startled. He didn't have such a fetish. Just as he was about to leave and reveal his identity to him, Lai Bao immediately lowered his body in panic. He told him not to. A small trading guild like his was unworthy of knowing his name. Yin Qinkyu waved his hand and walked out. Watching his back, Lai Bao broke into a cold sweat. A big shot like him coming to the black market is clearly asking for dirty work. Isn't asking for his name a death wish? After witnessing Yin Qinkyu's strength, Lai Bao immediately agreed to help without saying a word. It wasn't until he watched him leave that Lai Bao's rapidly beating heart finally calmed down. He then suddenly turned around and glared at the managers. How could you idiots have received such a big shot without noticing? The fox receptionist was so scared that her face was covered in cold sweat. She was panicking inside, wondering who could tell that this person was someone important. Lai Bao immediately demoted her to the lowest level receptionist. Then she turned around and looked at the black cat. She handed over the position of the guild supervisor to her. The black cat stood frozen in place. She was so happy she almost fainted. Now with the alchemy competition in Luling City approaching, only one day left. Lu Yuanji arrived at the courtyard gate, her spirits high. She had been too suppressed that day to be comforted by her junior brother like a child. She took a few deep breaths to compose herself. Then she slowly pushed open the door. Yin Qinkyu was circling a medicine cauldron conducting a test. Seeing them enter, he quickly went to greet them. Perhaps it was because he had recently read too many yellow books. Unconsciously, he learned some of the male protagonist's tricks. With just a few words, he made Lu Yuanji blush and her heart race. She had come this time to take the two of them out to relax. Yin Qinkyu didn't even think about it and ran out. The other 3 women followed behind. After a while, Miyun became tired. She wanted to find a place to rest for a while. So Luan's left Lulin here. She continued to stroll around with Yin Qinkyu alone. Yin Qinkyu, having been in seclusion for too long, was full of curiosity about everything here. Things like the cloth used for women's menstruation, the Indian magic oil sold by street vendors, and the cucumbers sold at the stalls. After walking around for a while, Lu Yuanji was red-faced and breathless from exhaustion, her whole body and clothes completely soaked. Seeing this, Yin Qinkyu quickly helped her down to rest, and immediately used his spiritual power. A refreshing breeze blew, blowing Lu Yuanji's hair and clothes, feeling exceptionally cool. Yin Qinkyu chuckled and used the wind control spell to help fan her. Is this better? Soon, a popsicle in the shape of a blooming rose slowly formed in his hand. Lu Yuanji took the popsicle and examined it carefully. She had never seen someone use spiritual techniques like this before. Yin Qinkyu scratched his head. He said it was also the first time he had used spiritual techniques for someone else like this. As he spoke, Yin Qinkyu conjured another popsicle. He chewed it loudly. Lu Yuanji blushed and lowered her head. Is this the first time you've done this for someone else? At that moment, a merchant walked up to the two of them. The two of them each picked out a hairpin for the other. The playful interaction had a bit of a young couple vibe, until it was evening. The group met at the agreed spot at the North Street intersection. Miyun waved her arms at the two of them. When Yin Qinkyu changed her style, Miyun couldn't help but stare in amazement. Yin Qinkyu laughed heartily. She told her that senior sister had helped with the styling. However, Lulin was utterly surprised upon hearing this. The young lady even helps others with their hair. The young man had originally entered the world to collect herbs, but unexpectedly he had gained the favor of the young lady. The woman's attentive care made Lorraine look puzzled. Miss usually avoids contact with the opposite sex at all costs. Now she's even cooking and making snacks herself. This kind of treatment wasn't even given before the old man got sick. Could it be that Miss is in love? Has a man appeared who can tame her? Unbelievable, this is big news. The gossip spirit instantly ignited at this moment. Lulin was about to ask something, but after making eye contact with Lu Yuanzi, she immediately quieted down and covered her mouth. Luling City is prosperous in commerce and trade. It is the wealthiest city in Muzhou. The night market is brightly lit. They quickly arrived at a restaurant of the Lu Chamber of Commerce. Lu Yuanzi was busy introducing it to him. The food inside is quite unique. It's a pity I didn't bring my junior brother to try it, so I let Yun Kinkyu choose which restaurant to go to. Saikyu clearly wants to go to that one. He keeps looking inside. Mu-yun looked at a pavilion in the distance with a slight doubt. She saw some women there in revealing clothing and heavy makeup. They were flirting and beckoning customers, constantly shouting, "Sir, come in and play." Yun Kinkyu immediately became anxious. "Damn it, junior sister, you can't say things like that. Where did I even look over there?" At this moment, a heavily made-up woman waved at Yun Kinkyu. "Little thief, don't have a thief's heart but no thief's courage. You've been staring long enough, come in and have some fun." Lu Yuanjin and Lulin quietly waited nearby. They were waiting to see what he would do next. Yun Kinkyu immediately raised a hand to stop her. She firmly told her that she would absolutely not go in. Only Miyun kept looking inside, curious about what kind of fun they were talking about. At that moment, a figure caught Lu Yuanji's attention. Yun Kinkyu looked in that direction questioningly. They saw a commotion at the entrance of the tavern. Then two young men reeking of alcohol walked out. The women quickly stepped aside to make way, and forced smiles, saying polite phrases like "take care and come back again." Lu Yuanji immediately recognized these two bastards. She darkened her face and gritted her teeth, saying, "The alchemist Liu Zhao, who betrayed the guild, and Kai Yongfu, the president of the Shenkai Guild, who has been targeting us. These two detestable scoundrels actually conspired together." And then, the two of them suddenly stopped in their tracks. He stumbled over looking drunk. He stammered, "Miss, a long time no see." Lu Zhaolin stepped in front of the young lady and scalded him. "Lu Zhi, you scoundrel. The Chamber of Commerce nurtured you for 10 years, and you betray us, shameless." Meanwhile, Kuan Yongfu continued, "Oh, Manager Lu, you can't say that. A good bird chooses a tree to roost on. The Lu family's business has already declined. Don't you even allow others to leave? If you're leaving, then leave, hurry up and get out." Lulin angrily pointed at the two of them. "Don't smudge in. We've already found a stronger alchemist. Wait until the alchemy conference and get beaten down." Lu Zhao scanned Lu Yuanji and the others. Finally, her gaze rested on the only male present, Yun Kinkyu. The alchemist Lu Xiao deliberately came to provoke them. The guards behind them spread out, blocking their path. "Since we finally met, let's have a good chat." "I also don't feel any powerful spiritual energy." Yanfu added sarcastically. "Miss Lu should simply marry Master Lu." "You'd be better off spending this time with the old master." Humiliated so public. A simple sentence made Lu Yuanji's nose feel a little tight. This young lady usually dislikes interacting with the opposite sex. Yun Kinkyu naturally wouldn't tolerate someone who tries to undermine him. How dare such a brat speak so arrogantly? Lu spat disdainfully. How dare you repeat what my old man said? Lu Zhou was almost laughing to death. He's only a second-rank alchemist. Damn, your father is my grandpa. So I don't want to acknowledge him as my son. Kuan Yongfu was afraid Lu Zhou would die of anger, so he quickly pulled him away. The alchemists hired by the Luo Trading Company only have good mouths. Miss Lu lacks discernment. But Luo Yuanji didn't take his words to heart at all. She couldn't help but smile slightly. This guy's really bad. And Lu Zhou was completely enraged by her smile. Kill this guy in front of us. The guards were all stunned, standing still. They waited for Qian Yongfu to give the order. At this moment he too was furious, his eyes wide open. Now everyone thinks they can bully the Luo family. What difference does it make to hit someone? Only a small amount of spiritual power emanated around him. The guards could even reach the corners of his clothes. In an instant they were sent flying. This kid is surprisingly so fierce. He then used one hand to grab Lu Zhao's neck and lift him up. Kid, what are you trying to do? Let go of me quickly. My senior sister is someone like you. She's not good enough for her. Lu Yuanji quickly stepped forward to stop him. Junior, you can't act recklessly in Luling City. Please don't be impulsive. Lu Zhou lay on the ground, coughing incessantly. Yun Qingyu also turned around. Wait for me tomorrow. He left the place. He was once the strongest immortal emperor in the divine realm, but now he was refining pills for a woman from the lower realm. All of this was because the woman's family's alchemist wanted to forcefully claim her. The pill refining conference was one of the grand events in Luling City. The next morning, the central square was already filled with a crowd of onlookers. As soon as Yun Kinkyu arrived, he was met with some trouble. Has the Luo family run out of people? They even sent a little yellow-haired boy to fill in. Yun King was not pleased. He immediately threw the person into the water pool. The surrounding people were shocked by his action, their mouths wide open. They quickly formed two lines to make way for him. Soon he arrived at the location of the Luo's Commerce Guild. He looked around but didn't see his two senior sisters. Lulin told him apologetically, "Your junior sister was jumping around a lot just now," and ran to the restroom with a pile of needles and thread. "My young miss knows you like sweets, so to keep you in good shape, she stayed up all night yesterday making a huge batch. It's possible that you came late because you stayed up late last night," Lu Liling said softly to Yun Kinkyu. "The young lady has never been this nice to a guy before. Have you thought about it, master? Have you considered it?" Yun Kinkyu nodded while eating a snack. "Have you already thought about it?" Lulin, full of gossip, asked. "What's the result of your consideration? Could it be that the two of them are getting together? I can finally have some wedding candy." Yun Kinkyu clenched her fist and squinted her eyes, determined to win. Lulin was also very excited, clapping and cheering. Before she could finish celebrating, Yun King continued. "Such a talented pastry chef must be kept to myself. It would be awful if someone else gets them." Lulin was instantly speechless. What was that about? At that moment, a figure caught her attention. The woman in front of her wore a bright red robe. It accentuated her curvy figure, making it hard to look away. She also wore a red flower hairpin. It was the one Yun Kinkyu had picked out for her when they went shopping together that day. Her appearance left Yun Kinkyu stunned. Her gentle, intellectual demeanor had turned into a more mature, glamorous one. Lulin couldn't help but be slightly shocked. What a stunning outfit. Miss usually doesn't dress like this. Lu Yuanji sat down beside Yun Kinkyu. She asked with a smile, "Are the sweets delicious?" Yun Kinkyu sat up straight. From time to time, she secretly glanced at the beautiful legs under her skirt. Senior sister's legs are truly terrifyingly beautiful. Lu Yuanji dressed up so meticulously precisely to complement this extravagant headdress. It's just the right color, also for good luck. Yun Kinkyu patted her chest. Lu Yuanji's face immediately turned red. She whispered in a voice only she could hear, "I'll be waiting for you to return victorious." With the end of the opening performance of the alchemy conference, And the organizers call? The alchemy conference is about to begin. The alchemists are descending one after another from their resting lofts, ascending the alchemy stage watched by tens of thousands. Many spectators below are cheering for their favorite alchemists. KK Adoil, you look beautiful today. After winning, you must sing and dance? Shut up, my brother Lu Zhuang is the handsome one. Yunqing is so boring. He casually scans the surroundings with his gaze. The police just saw Liu Zhao, who had a conflict last night. Liu Zhao stared at this side with a fierce gaze. His face was filled with anger. He planned to completely crush him at the alchemy conference. The others were also quite unfriendly toward Yun Qingqiu. They felt that his words last night were incredibly arrogant. Of course, there was one more very important reason. Everyone wanted to pick the flower of Luling City Lo Yuanzi. Yun Qingqiu was really annoyed by the way these people were staring at him. He turned around and made a heart gesture towards Lu Yuanji. Lu Yuanji blushed and smiled. She also returned a heart gesture in an exaggerated manner. The alchemists on stage were all going crazy. Yun Qingqiu felt quite pleased inside. They think they can intimidate me and ruin my morale. Humph. Let's see who's tougher. However, there was one thing that did make him a little concerned. Senior sister's expression seems a little off. What's that shy blush? But for a moment he felt like he had forgotten something important. One is Little V, a second-order alchemist from the Xiaoshan Guild. There's no comparison between these two, right? On the pavilions near the square? Overlooking the alchemy conference, the city lord was the first to ask, "Who do you all think has the best chance of winning this year's alchemy competition?" A flatterer nearby took a couple of gulps of wine. Niao Fei, the two-time champion second-order alchemist, is dedicated to refining medicine, and recently refined an exorcism pill that's nearly on par with a second-order peak pill. He must be even stronger now. But someone else had a different opinion. They also think that although Ma Fei is strong, he may not be the strongest this year. I hear a powerful alchemist has also arrived in the outer city. His name is Liu Zhuang and he's quite extraordinary. Another Chamber of Commerce president continued, adding, "And that Kai something. I heard he became a second-order alchemist right after he came of age. He has incredibly strong talent." Leopard's black market has extensive intelligence sources. You must have gathered quite a bit of intelligence as well. Who do you think has a chance of winning the championship? Lai Baba was immediately startled. She couldn't help but think of that young-looking top-tier alchemist, the one who secretly assisted the Lu Chamber of Commerce and was so close to Lu Anji. Without a doubt, he was enraged by love for her. Has anyone noticed the member of the Roach Guild? The city lord was slightly stunned. After thinking for a moment, he recalled that the person the leopard mentioned was Liu Xiao. But soon he was contradicted by everyone. After all, news of that person leaving the Lu family after failing to force a marriage had already spread. Lai Baba secretly smiled. That guy probably doesn't even know how foolish and ridiculous he looks right now. He threatened to tell everyone that he was referring to the young alchemist. The Chamber of Commerce presidents were all taken aback for a moment. Then they all burst into laughter. They all thought Lai Baba was joking. But when it comes to alchemy, he isn't even fit to carry Liu Xiao's shoes. They requested that after the alchemy conference, he be handed over to them for personal handling. Those present were all waiting to divide up the Luo family's property. Only Lo Bao knew the truth. The things Yun Qingqiu ordered have already started to be secretly arranged. These fools won't last much longer, they'll all be finished soon. Sit tight here and see how many more days you can laugh. I'm sure those young talents will probably start doubting their lives after they re-struck down. I just wonder, after everything is done, whether that person will be willing to grace us with even a small connection. If I could really latch onto the big shot, it's fine if I spend my whole life as a lackey. The mighty immortal emperor is actually looked down upon by a mere alchemist. He even wants to steal his woman. The lesson from last night wasn't enough. Yun Qingqiu plans to spare his life. Let him truly experience what cruelty means. After doing Wulong, firecrackers rang out. The alchemy conference has officially begun. The staff then began introducing the alchemists one by one. Each alchemist stood up. There were large groups of fans or fake fans standing up, applauding, cheering, and creating a spectacle. The slogans were also shouted very loudly. They could sing, they could practice alchemy, and they didn't to look bad. It's unclear whether this was intentional or unintentional by the officials, but Yun Qingqiu was placed last. By the time they finished introducing him, Yun Qingqiu was nearly falling asleep. Yawning, he stood up. However, the onlookers seemed to have little faith in him. They thought he was too arrogant. In this chaotic atmosphere, Lu Yunyi suddenly stood up. She merely placed her hand on her chest, signifying that he was the one in her heart. Yun Qingqiu made a heart gesture with her hands, indicating she received it. The smug alchemists were suddenly struck with a heavy blow. Their sense of superiority was instantly shattered. Yunkinki shook his head helplessly. Why bother? They were already humiliated, yet still harboring hostility. Haven't had enough of the dog food, huh? Even the host twitched his lips for a long time. Only then did he begin the next round of the draw. According to the rules, the contestant who draws number 1 is the challenger. She must face challenges from subsequently numbered contestants one after another. The winner will be the new champion. What Yunkinki didn't know was, the staff had already been bribed and manipulated the draw. Yunkinki was guaranteed to draw number 1, while Lizo was number 2. Yunkinki looked at the number in her hand. She already understood what was going on, but he smiled slightly. Even if others didn't cheat, he still wanted to draw number 1 himself. This is even better, you all stop playing. After the draw, the numbers are announced. Yunkinki's name was written first. All the alchemists looked at the announcement board. This kid actually They all know that the earlier you go, the bigger the disadvantage. This kid must have been set up. Lu Wenji clenched her fists in anger. How could this be such a coincidence? These guys must have used underhanded tactics. Even Mion was very conflicted. She understood that there was a lot of pressure being the first one to go. Yunkinki's medicinal formula would be known to the later alchemists. This way they will have time to prepare more complex pills. Lu Yuanji nervously watched the young man's figure. She only faintly said, I believe in him. As for the other's secret delight, Yunkin was very puzzled. Do I really look that weak? Just because I look young and have no reputation? Does that alone make it easy to assume I'm weak? These people have such simple minds. They will definitely suffer in the future. He calmly walked up to the alchemy platform. There's no need to wait for the future. Let me give you some loving care. However, Yunkinku didn't realize the real reason others looked down on him. Actually, it's because he has a head of thick, long hair. Yunkinku ignored everyone. Then under everyone's gaze, he took out a rusty cauldron that looked like a broken pot. The alchemists couldn't help but laugh loudly. Is this guy a joke? He actually brought a pot for pickling vegetables to the alchemy competition. The Chamber of Commerce presidents of Laoshi were also laughing uproariously. Haha, I get it now. This guy's an undercover agent. He's here to bring down the Luo Trading Company. Lai Baba looked at them with disdain. They can laugh now. Just wait until you start crying later. This man participated in the alchemy conference for a woman. His goal is to get that beautiful female alchemist, give him a good humiliation. Under the watchful eyes of thousands, he took out a rusty cauldron like a broken pot. He didn't pay any attention to the ridicule. He simply glanced at the auxiliary herbs on the nearby table. At his command, those herbs, propelled by spiritual energy, all poured into the cauldron. A few well-informed alchemists were stunned. Ink fruit peels, ink fruit grass, and spirit branch leaves, all high-grade medicinal materials. Is he really planning to use this broken pot to refine high-level pills? An alchemist quietly leaned over to the top contender, Mafi, and asked for his opinion. Mafi casually replied, what else is there to say? I really can't tell if this kid is just stupid. That medicinal cauldron is practically scrap. It can't provide any enhancement at all. They are overestimating themselves. Just wait for the show. I heard Mafi say that. Lu Zhou is already secretly enjoying himself, but what he doesn't know is, this old medicinal cauldron was specially bought by Yun Kinkyu as a discarded item from the black market. It's definitely a negative growth rate. There's no need to worry about the quality being too high to control. As the temperature in the alchemy furnace rises, the condensation like grass gradually decomposes into fine dust particles, sparkling and emitting a beautiful condensation light within the flames. The observing alchemist judge's eyes narrowed. Condensation like grass is very fragile. Basically, a little preheating will cause it to disperse. Fluorescent materials can also be destroyed. It's basically impossible to encounter this glowing situation. The more fluorescence, the better. It shows the alchemist's fire control skills. I'm afraid even some old alchemists in the city can't do it. The fiery red flames in the furnace, entwined with the light blue medicinal liquid refined from herbs. As time went on, the medicinal liquid became clearer and purer, leaving everyone in the audience astonished. They couldn't understand what kind of terrifying refining technique this was. They had never seen anything like this before. Yet Yun Q continued refining without a care. The flames under his control behaved like obedient pets. This wasn't alchemy, this was pure art. Gradually the mocking voices faded and the insults ceased. Everyone's gaze was fixed on those two colors. Lu Yuanji watched the brilliant colors in excitement. How's the alchemy going? Is it proceeding smoothly? Myun is also watching intently. This is the kind of skill possessed only by third-tier alchemists, or even higher. Under the gaze of the crowd, the pill gradually takes shape. A purple pill slowly appears before everyone's eyes. The crowd can't help but gossip. A purple pill, a second-tier high-quality healing pill. No, it's a coagulation pill. The alchemists were all a little dumbfounded. The herbs he chose should have been the ingredients for a high-grade second-rank blood-condensing pill. But what appeared in the end was only a purple pill. Liu Zhou let out a sinister smile. The purple pill is the lowest grade of second-rank pill. The difficulty is only... He actually brought out such a thing to compete. He was acting so impressive earlier. But in the end, he only made this crappy thing. The audience was also in an uproar, wondering what was going on. I waited so long just to see this. Amidst the noise, Yun Kinkyu calmly and steadily flipped his wrist. Another pill slowly rose from the cauldron. It was bright red with a faint smell of blood. After smelling it, his whole body felt invigorated. The alchemists observing nearby were instantly horrified. A furnace with 2 pills, and they're both blood coagulation pills. The difficulty of making a blood coagulation pill is already higher than that of most third-grade pills. This might directly secure first place. However, Yun Kinkyu didn't have a strong desire to show off. It was just that his skills were too impressive. The alchemists all showed expressions of despair. Damn it, just a third-grade pill with such high difficulty could win the championship. You refined another second-grade pill? How much do you want to win before you're satisfied? This isn't fair. That broken furnace can still produce this kind of result? Are you trying to kill us? The alchemist rigged the competition to crush the immortal emperor. But this time he completely shot himself in the foot. Even the host is standing there speechless. The alchemy competition usually lasts for 3 days. But this time, it's going to end in just 30 minutes. The judges are at a loss. This kid not only tortured a bunch of alchemists, but also conveniently defeated this old alchemist. Yun Kinkyu placed the pill onto the jade plate and handed it to the host. The pill is ready. You should check it. The host took the jade plate. With this fragrance, do you even need to check it? He swallowed a mouthful of sleep foam, gritted his teeth, and said, "The final score, in my personal opinion, is a perfect 10. The other judges also gave a perfect score of 10. The audience was still in shock, whispering to each other. A perfect 10 from the start. How will the alchemist in the back break this? A perfect 10 from the start. Doesn't that mean it's almost like winning the championship?" Under the reluctant gaze of the host, Yun Kinkyu quickly put away the 2 pills. Then she smiled and made a heart gesture to Liu Yuanji below the stage. Liu Yuanji's face flushed with joy, nodding to show she received the gesture. He did it. The excitement was overwhelming. And he truly and completely crushed the competition, leaving the other alchemists completely helpless. Junior brother was so cool. The host quickly brought out a flag with a perfect 10 on it, placed it on the alchemy table. At this moment, Yun Kinkyu is the arena champion. Everyone else is now a challenger. Liu Zhou almost broke down. In order to publicly defeat this person, he purposely manipulated the lottery. He hoped to be the second to enter and win with overwhelming force. But as it turns out, he became the first to be defeated. Next, the host announced the second contestant, Liu Xiao. He was suddenly taken aback. How the hell do I even go? I'm totally going to get beaten up, aren't I? As soon as I go up, Liu Xiao will be the first to embarrass himself. A hand suddenly slapped on his shoulder. It's your turn. Go ahead. Forget about winning the championship. Just show off our style. Liu Zhou looked completely disheartened. What a show-off. This person clearly wants to see him make a fool of himself. Liu Zhou gritted his teeth, trembling all over. He had thought it was just a regular little brat, but never imagined he'd be pushed to this extent. Liu Zhou slumped to the ground in despair. With his head lowered, he weakly said, "I forfeit." These words stunned the crowd below. The crowd is also filled with boos. The host lets out a helpless sigh, then looks at the other alchemists, the third one. The third alchemist steps forward and bows to everyone. He says there's a family matter and leaves. Since someone already forfeited and embarrassed themselves, no need to panic. The host continues to announce the next contestant. Voices of forfeit keep coming in. The host, furious, threw the list on the ground, angrily asking, "Wants to go up, tell me directly?" The alchemists exchanged glances, all with bitter expressions. None of them wanted to be the first to make a fool of themselves. Lai Baba wasn't surprised at all. This adult truly showed no mercy. In the end, the host could only helplessly walk onto the stage, announcing that all the other contestants have forfeited. Therefore, the champion of this alchemy conference is Yun Kinkyu, an alchemist from the Lu's Merchant Guild. Yun Kinkyu grinned as she took the cauldron and held it above her head. At that moment, fireworks went off. Colorful confetti fluttered down like flowers. Many girls who'd lost their way in life stared with twinkling eyes, admiring Yun Kinkyu on the alchemy stage. He's refining medicine, waving his arms and shouting, "Young Master Kinkyu is invincible. We are his loyal fans forever. Handsome and charming, he can refine medicine. We are all his little clouds." The mortal-ranked alchemist is severely injured. Not only was he abused, but even his accumulated fans are gone like that. Yun Kinkyu was quite frightened by the screaming female fans in the audience. He's experienced a lot of storms and waves, but this kind of thing is a first. But he still underestimated the power of female fans. They even launched a frenzied pursuit, demanding autographs and hugs. He quickly pulled Luanji and ran wildly. They ran down an entire street. Finally, they hid in an abandoned water jar at the edge of a small alley. Yun Kinkyu looked at the various lipstick marks on his clothes. He never expected that the aftermath of winning the championship would be so disastrous. This is a shirt that Xiaoya sewed by hand. How should I explain this when I go back? The strongest immortal emperor won the championship at the alchemy conference as expected. But unexpectedly, he ended up being chased madly by a group of little fangirls. The two of them had no choice but to hide in a water tank. Yun Kinkyu looked at the lipstick marks all over her body and couldn't help but sigh, realizing how miserable the aftermath of winning the championship was. In this narrow water tank, the two of them were pressed closely together. Two long, slender jade-like legs were bent on either side of Yun Kinkyu. The movement was rather enchanting and ambiguous. Yun Kinkyu swallowed nervously. Since the two were so close, his eyes didn't know where to look. The same was true for Lu Yuanji. It was the first time she was this close to a man. Her heart couldn't help but race. But I accidentally discovered a yellow book, slipping from Yun Kingyu's arms. As the book slowly fell to the ground, it happened to open to a certain illustration that was incredibly arousing. Luoji was startled at first, then her breathing became somewhat erratic. A man and a woman alone together in such a confined space. The atmosphere was extremely ambiguous. Her breathing became increasingly rapid. Her beautiful eyes, filled with tears, stared fixedly at Yun Kinkyu. Her mind suddenly went blank. Unconsciously, she closed her eyes and slowly leaned in. Yun Kinkyu was also somewhat flustered. What's going on? This is a first for him too. What should he do? In this critical moment, a rough shout suddenly came from outside. They saw them stop here earlier, hurry and search. Hearing a sound, Lu Yuanji hastily stopped kissing. Alertly supporting the water jar, she quickly thought about how to deal with the situation. In an instant, Lu Yuanji's spiritual energy burst forth, her clothes fluttering. Yun Kinkyu's gaze instinctively shifted downwards. He only felt a dizziness in his head. I'm dead again? The moment Lu Yuanji's spiritual energy burst forth, it shattered the water jar into countless pieces. The searching crowd immediately gathered together. The next second, Luo Yuanji pulled Yun Kinkyu up and leaped about a retreat. Dozens of sharp flashes of knives attacked one after another. Lu Yuanji couldn't dodge in time. She could only use Ling Xiao to block. Soon explosive spiritual energy sparks erupted in the air. Just as they were about to leave, 7 or 8 cultivators leapt onto the roof to launch an attack. Kuan Yongfu stood in the alley looking up. Miss Lo, you really can run, huh? Lu Yuan's beautiful eyes swept coldly. Her junior brother Jai was in a very bad condition, stuck at the Ki refining stage. Helpless, she could only jump down with him. Kuan Yongfu shook his paper fan and walked over with a smile. I didn't expect you really brought a master here. But this time, my gains aren't small either. Not only did I get the most beautiful woman in Luling City, but I also conveniently got a powerful alchemist as my puppet. Lu Zhou also stepped forward, feeling incredibly elated. Winning the championship, so what? Defeating a whole group of alchemists, so what? In the end, didn't they still fall into my hands? He slowly approached Lu Yuanji. You ultimately still belong to me. But suddenly he stopped. His trembling fingers pointed at the two of them. He looked at their disheveled clothes. His mind couldn't help but wander. You two were actually in the water jar? His gaze drifted downwards. On the ground was a well-known racy novel, Kissing My Senior Sister. Damn it, you two were even using a best-selling book to spice things up. It's safe to say he was utterly shocked. Luanzi said calmly and slowly, Junior, did you torture him too badly during the alchemy process? Why is he such a defeated dog? Yun Kinyu tugged at Lu Yuanzi's skirt. Lu Zhou was so angry he nearly cried. You still dare to touch my leg in front of me? President, do something? Kuan Yongfu clapped his hands. It's better to act sooner rather than later. Too many things can happen overnight. He prepared for any eventuality. And this time he even specifically arranged for other help. Speaking of which, dozens of figures in black clothing, masked cultivators attacked from the rooftops. But from their attire, it's clear they're all from the black market. The alchemist was humiliated at the assembly and held a grudge. So he specifically called in people from the black market. He wants to teach them a lesson behind their backs. Seeing the arrival of those people, Kuan Yongfu quickly made way for them. Then he wore a smug expression. Did you see that? Give up? Miss Lu is very clear about the power of those from the black market. This guy actually found people from the black market to back him up. I'm afraid this time he truly won't be able to escape, he confidently said to Le Babao. Brother Leopard, please go ahead and take action. A generous reward will follow once it's done. However, Le Babao ignored him. He quickly walked a few steps and reached Yun Kinkyu. Then he knelt heavily on one knee. Your humble servant comes to ask for master's forgiveness. This petty servant is not worth troubling you, master. I will execute them right away. Kuan Yongfu was instantly stunned. The black market boss knelt down to Yun Kinkyu. What the hell is this?